Formula One on 5 Live.
Hello and welcome to live coverage of the second round of the 2025 Formula One season. The circus heads from Australia to China this weekend as the Shanghai International Circuit has also played host this weekend to the first sprint event of the year in a season that is anticipated to be closer than ever. We're heading into this round not knowing who might win, and on top of that, this weekend history has been made in the sport once again by Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari.
Every time you get into Ferrari, there's such a special feeling. Even just working with the team, it's really unique.
It has been an absolutely sublime Saturday for Lewis Hamilton. After a disaster opening race for Ferrari, he arrives in China and he puts the Ferrari on the top step. It's a first win for Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari, who takes the Chinese sprint.
It's a P1, baby. It was masterclass for tires management.
Great job, guys.
What a Saturday it was for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. Can they do it again this morning? It won't be as easy for the seven-time champion, but you can never say never in Formula One. We're less than, just about 10 minutes away actually from lights out for the Chinese Grand Prix, and alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, to take you through all 56 laps of it is the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, I think we've just got to reflect on Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari winning the sprint. A massive day for the sport, for any general sporting fan to see that so soon into the year.
Huge day for Formula One, for Lewis, for Ferrari, and for all the fans around the world that love and adore this sport. He controlled it brilliantly, Harry. He really did. From start to finish, I thought that his tyre management was superb, and the way that he was just able to pull away from Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, who eventually overtook Max, was incredible, really. The last sort of 7-8 laps, he really showed his experience.
Andrew, people may be asking, well, if he won the sprints, then he could do it again for this afternoon's race in China. Is this Ferrari now bouncing back after a tough start to the year?
Well, they're definitely bouncing back, Harry, but Hamilton's only qualified fifth for the Grand Prix, one place ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. It feels to me like the reason he was on pole was he hit the ground running on Friday for qualifying for the sprint, and a couple of other people didn't, particularly the two McLaren drivers, Oscar Piastri, who's starting the Grand Prix from pole, and Lando Norris, who's starting at third. Really should have been ahead of him, but they made errors in their qualifying for the sprint. This is now the kind of natural order of the cars, if you like, that we're looking at on the start of the Grand Prix. Winning from fifth is a tall order, and I don't think Ferrari think that they're quite on the pace of McLaren, but then I don't think anybody's quite on the pace of McLaren at the moment.
We'll come on to McLaren, but tyre management really was the talk of the town after yesterday's sprint race. So let's hear from Lewis Hamilton speaking about just that. He's talking to Alex Brundle.
In general, at this track, it's a lot of front wear. Yesterday, I think all of us had front left graining particularly, and so I think today really you try and nurse the tire as much as you can, but it's all techniques we use. It's car setup, car balance that you have. Also depends where you are position wise, but whoever can manage the tyres best today is gonna most likely win the race.
You did that beautifully yesterday from pole position. You're obviously starting a little bit further back in the Grand Prix. Have you got a strategy to make sure you still keep that front tyre in despite being in a little bit more dirty air?
I do, but again, thinking about it and writing it down is one thing, but then putting it into practice is another. So, but I love this circuit, so I really hope today the car is kind to me and I'm able to deliver what I think I can deliver.
Well, let's see what he can deliver. He'll be starting from fifth place ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. The packed out grandstands down the main straight in Shanghai are absolutely filled to the brim with Chinese fans wearing red, waving flags with the number 44 adorned on it. A lot of Hamilton supporters here in Shanghai. But Sam, the man who has the best view in the house is Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. 2 laps in qualifying that were both good enough for pole position. He looked on rails in that McLaren.
He looked on rails. I think his strategy was slightly different to Lando's. I think Lando wanted to go out there and do a time that simply nobody else can match and be 2 or 3 tenths clear, and being that fast actually hindered him. We saw what he was capable of doing in Q2. Oscar put together 2 cleaner laps that ultimately got him the pole position. I think they're very matched on pace, and it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic on how they work, if they work together this afternoon, or if we see a papaya all-out battle to the end.
Well, both papaya cars will be starting right behind each other, but it is the Australian who has secured his first career pole position. Let's hear what his expectations are for the race. Again, talking to Alex Brundle.
I think the picture's still different from Melbourne. I'm expecting Ferrari to be a challenger today, definitely. Obviously starting off the front, hopefully I can keep some clean air and that'll help me out a bit. But we have changed a few things from the sprint that will hopefully help us a bit. So I'm still expecting Ferrari to be there, but now that I'm starting at the front and not where the Ferraris are today, it's hopefully a bit of an advantage. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm expecting a pretty tense afternoon.
It's going to be a long, hot, strategic race, leaning heavily potentially on the hard tyre with a lot of unknowns. How much number crunching can you do, and how much do you have to make decisions on the fly this afternoon?
We know what the medium's going to do, more or less. We obviously all run it in the sprint, but the hard nobody's run, and there's a lot of unknowns. It's the first time we've raced with this tyre ever. The hard tyre is new for this year, so it's going to be a challenge for everybody and a step into the unknown. So it's going to make things pretty interesting, but I'm still expecting it to be a pretty tough race, even on the hards.
A tough race then expected, not just for our pole sitter, but for the entire grid. But Piastri will have the advantage, pole position on the left-hand side here. Sam, you spoke about Lando Norris. Obviously, he won't be happy that his teammate has out-qualified him. Norris starts third. It's still his best ever start in China. But while he looks fast, the car just seems like it can be a little bit tricky to drive at times. A few mistakes, not just in qualifying, but throughout the weekend from Norris.
I think when you're asking a lot from any car, the car is nervous and on edge, but particularly this McLaren. They've built a rapid race car for this season, haven't they, McLaren? And they clearly the team to beat. But what Lando's saying is true. The car is challenging to drive when you're putting it under that much load and being that intense with your inputs.
Yeah, well, Lando Norris then will go from third. He'll have the company of Max Verstappen, Andrew, in the Red Bull. Starts from fourth. I think he said yesterday to one of the reporters that the only chance he has to win is if everybody retires in front of him. Surely not. Surely Max Verstappen could still be in with a shot at this one.
Well, he's really been talking down the quality of that Red Bull car, but the undertone of his words has basically been, I'm faster than everybody else, and therefore if I'm not qualifying at the front, then there's something wrong with the car, which is, the self-belief that you need to show as a racing driver. But I'm not sure that it's necessarily the case that he's like massively faster over one lap than Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, etc. So obviously Red Bull don't have the advantage that they had for much of 22 and all of 2023 and the first half of 2024. So he's in an unfamiliar situation from that point of view. I think he's talking about the sprint race. He was struggling for pace in that. It's only early days in this season, Harry, isn't it? We're just getting a sense of the form. So you are right. You can never rule Max Verstappen out. Everybody in Formula One says the same. That almost word for word, people say. So you can't rule him out. Simple as that.
For me, with Max Verstappen, I think that he hasn't got the quickest car this year. I do think the McLaren and some of the others have taken a big step. But he's having to push harder this year, and therefore the tyre management is a little bit going out the window. So I think we're going to see him struggle the last sort of 7-8 laps of each stint.
Well, we shall run you through the full grid shortly. We're about 5 minutes away from lights out for the Chinese Grand Prix. But first on 5 Live, let's get your latest news and headlines with Isabel Kimbry.
The voice of the UK.
5 Live Formula One.
Good morning to you. Welcome. You're listening to live coverage of round 2 of the 2025 Formula One World Championship. We are just a few moments away from lights out for the Chinese Grand Prix in one of the most highly anticipated Formula One seasons in recent history. We go into each race, although we've only about to start our second one, not quite knowing where the form book lies. But at the moment, it is McLaren who look like they have the edge. And Oscar Piastri, the Australian driver, starts on pole position, his first ever career pole. Alongside me, Harry Benjamin, is the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, next to Oscar Piastri on the grid is the Mercedes of George Russell. Now, that was a bit of a surprise for us in qualifying.
Big surprise. Didn't expect to see Mercedes up that high. Didn't even think that they were really in the equation for a front row start. But great job by George Russell. He was kind of playing, wasn't he, with his outlaps, to go slow, to go fast. He went in between on that final run and found something. What can he do from there, though? Can he cement a podium finish today, or is he going to get swallowed up by Hamilton, Leclerc and Verstappen?
Yeah, all about that start, isn't it? He'll have that inside line when it sweeps in on you through that right-hander, a 270-degree corner to kick-start the 16 turns that make up this Shanghai International Circuit. If we just flip down a little bit to best of the rest, I think we need to give a mention to the Racing Bull of Isaac Hadjar, the fastest rookie out there. He's starting 7th.
He is. He did a great job yesterday. His teammate is in 9th, Yuki Tsunoda, who, to be fair, has had a habit of out-qualifying teammates. And I think I saw a stat yesterday where when Liam Lawson was his teammate, he out-qualified him in every single event pretty much for the remainder of last season. So Isaac Hadjar having a nice little start to his Formula One career.
Yeah, both Racing Bulls, as you say, up there. Hadjar 7th, Yuki Tsunoda in 9th. The other Red Bull, though, the pressure building on Liam Lawson. He qualified last. They've made some suspension setup changes, so he'll be going from the pit lane. What does he need to do this afternoon? What can he do this afternoon?
I think just more learning about the car. If he can pick up a point or two, then that's a good result. But certainly just getting a better feeling underneath him with that race car, he'll leave China happier than where he is right now.
Well, we are coming up to 3 o'clock local time in Shanghai. Here we go, round 2 of the 2025 Formula One season. Just moments away, 6 different teams find themselves starting in the top 10. A first-time pole sitter. Are we about to see more teammate rivalries play out, midfield scraps and more? It is set up to be rather nice. 56 laps ahead of us. It is almost time to go racing. In fact, it is time for the Chinese Grand Prix. From their grid spots on the formation lap, it's Oscar Piastri who heads the field for McLaren, his first pole position in Formula One. Alongside him on the front row, the Mercedes of George Russell. Lando Norris starts 3rd, ahead of Max Verstappen, the reigning champion in the Red Bull. Yesterday's sprint winner Lewis Hamilton starts 5th for Ferrari, ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. Best of the rest goes to Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. He goes from 7th, ahead of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. Yuki Tsunoda is 9th, and Alex Albon in the Williams rounds out the top 10. Esteban Ocon in the Haas just missed out in 11th, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, Sauber. Fernando Alonso and his teammate Lance Stroll start 13th and 14th for Aston Martin, ahead of Carlos Sainz in the other Williams. Pierre Gasly 16th for Alpine, ahead of Ollie Behrman's Haas. Jack Doohan in the other Alpine goes from 18th on the grid. Last on the grid in 19th will be Gabriel Bortoleto Sauber, and from the pit lane, having qualified last but set up changes, Liam Lawson in the Red Bull. Well, already on this formation lap, Oscar Piastri is peeling round the right-hander of turn 13 on that long start, on that long back straight, 1.4 kilometres straight. Now, Sam, in terms of tyres, we've been trying to get our heads around the strategy. We're thinking of a 2-stopper, but what do we know more about the tyres now that we can see them?
Well, it looks pretty much like everybody bar Lance Stroll, Oliver Behrman and Liam Lawson are going to be starting on the medium tyre. So those 3 have opted for the hard. Everybody else is going to be starting on the medium.
And the thing is, no one on those hard tyres, people don't know what they're going to be like, do they? So that's going to be a huge step into the unknown.
It is going to be a huge step into the unknown. Everybody obviously ran the medium compound tyre yesterday for the sprint race. We know what the lifespan is of that tyre, but the cars are going to be even heavier today, putting the tyres under even more stress. What kind of lap they can get to? Probably looking at around about 20 laps on the medium.
Well, the bright blue skies above this Shanghai International Circuit, the sunshine just trying to break through the whispery clouds that have slightly overcasted the circuit. We're not expecting any rain for the duration of this Grand Prix, the 18th edition of the Chinese Grand Prix. Last minute burnouts for Oscar Piastri as he now sets himself up in his grid box. What are they doing, Sam, on their approach to the grid?
Well, you're trying to get some exterior heat onto the surface of those rear tyres, trying to get them to kind of almost glue and melt to the surface of the track, burning a little bit of rubber. Then you'll do a bite point find when you get to your grid. You'll go back to neutral, and then it's a case of finding the right revs, and away you go.
This is the sound of Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes rookie, who has just lined up in his 8th spot. We're going to be expecting 19 cars to line up on the grid. On the back row will be Jack Doohan's Alpine and Gabriel Bortoleto, the Formula 2 champion, the Brazilian, who's actually managed by Fernando Alonso, lines up 19th. Liam Lawson in the Red Bull will go from the pit lane. A lot of work on the Kiwis' hands this afternoon. But at the front then, that is where we will focus. And on the front row is George Russell's Mercedes. On pole position is the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. It's all ice to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in China. And it's a good start for the Mercedes of Russell. Piastri squeezes him going into the right-hander of turn 1. Piastri doesn't give an inch. Russell has to step out of it, and that allows Lando Norris in the McLaren all the way around the right side, well, outside, as they arc their way through turn 1 and cut back to the left-hand side. Norris up to second, ahead of George Russell, but it's Oscar Piastri who leads over the crest at turn 5. Is Norris going to have a look down the inside of his teammate? No, he's not. Into the right-hander of 6, and it's Oscar Piastri who leads.
Just the start the McLaren wanted as George Russell fights back with Lando Norris, but can't quite get his car through the high-speed sweepers. Great start from McLaren, poor start. Not normal, this, from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton has managed to get himself up into 4th as one of the Racing Bull cars runs out wide. Max Verstappen has fallen down to 6th. It's Piastri ahead of Norris. Then comes George Russell. Here is Verstappen.
Yeah, Charles has a broken front wing.
Verstappen reporting that Charles Leclerc has a broken front wing. Leclerc is the driver in front of Verstappen. It's Piastri, Norris, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, the top 5. Verstappen, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Ocon, the top 10.
So I didn't see it, but the producers tell me that the Ferraris came together and that damage on Leclerc's front wing was caused by Hamilton.
We can see a little bit of scraping, I think, on the left-hand side. The front wing end plate from Charles Leclerc's Ferrari has gone. Hamilton is up to 4th and trying to hunt down his old teammate George Russell. A good start for Yuki Tsunoda, a little bit further back in the Racing Bull. He is up into 8th spot ahead of his rookie teammate Hadjar. Esteban Ocon up into the points for Haas. Albon is 11th ahead of Alonso. Gasly's made a good start up into 13th and is right on the back of Fernando Alonso as they once again come through turn 1. Then comes Lance Stroll. Carlos Sainz is 15th ahead of Ollie Behrman, who is under pressure from the Alpine of Jack Doohan. Lovely move, I think, from Doohan, who's trying it round the outside into turn 1, but Behrman bites back as they come through the left-hander of 2. Doohan back down to 17th. Then it's Lawson from the pit lane up to 18th. Hulkenberg's 19th, and problems for Bortoleto, who's coming to the pits. Now, we're about to see what happened to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Coming through the right-hander, it gets to a pinch point, doesn't it, Sam, on the apex, and it was Charles Leclerc who was pinned up against the curb and then just loses control of his Ferrari, and he goes into Hamilton.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything Lewis could really do about that. They just come together at a pinch point.
And I wonder if Lewis Hamilton might be slightly worried of Ferrari of a rear right puncture. So far, nothing doing there, but it's Hamilton 4th, Charles Leclerc 5th.
Yeah, Leclerc actually hadn't made a good start. He was behind Verstappen going into turn 1. He was trying to make ground on the inside, and he got really tight on the sort of slowest apex of that long looping corner, and he got an oversteer, and that flicked him sideways into Hamilton. That's what's damaged his front wing.
Well, the DRS is now enabled after one lap, the drag reduction system, where in certain parts parts of this track, down the main straight and down that long back straight. When you're within a second of the car in front of you, you can press a button on the steering wheel and your rear wing flap flies open to give you a little boost, a few kilometers an hour extra in a straight line to allow you to close up to the car in front. It's lap 3 of 56 of the Chinese Grand Prix at the Shanghai International Circuit, and it was a good start from Oscar Piastri, who initially came under pressure from George Russell, but that pressure ended up pushing Russell back a place as Lando Norris in the McLaren managed to make up a position and makes it a 1-2 currently for McLaren. Russell third with Hamilton and Leclerc the top 5, but the 2 Ferraris coming together on lap 1.
George Russell holding his own at the moment in third. Charles Leclerc.
We have 20 to 30 points loss on the front. If we can survive, we wait the first stop.
We can do it.
Charles Leclerc sounding a little bit downbeat. We can survive, he thinks, with a broken front wing. They've got to try and make it to lap 14, lap 20.
Yeah, around mid-teens is around about the first stop, maybe a bit later. 20 to 30 points are down, which is quite a lot. Sometimes, like, what, a tenth or two a lap? Is that right? Something like that?
It's not just that. It's also the fact that this track is really, really hard on that front left tyre. So if you've got a car that is typically more understeery because you've lost those points of downforce, that can make the graining even worse. So I expect him to have to be overusing those front tyres right now. We might see him being an earlier stopper than what he originally thought.
Yeah, well, let's see how Charles Leclerc gets on then. He's still holding firm in 5th place. Max Verstappen, the big loser, at the front of the field. He's down to 6th. He's lost 2 places on the opening lap.
Brakes on fire for Alonso.
That was Pierre Gasly reporting that Fernando Alonso's brakes are on fire. Alonso is currently in 12th. He's made up 1 position. Gasly has had a good start up from 16th and is chasing down the Aston Martin driver as they arc their way through turn 1, 270 degrees to the right-hand side before you then come back on yourself through the left.
And he's right, the rear of that Aston Martin car is smoking slightly on the end of braking zones. We saw him just misjudge the braking zone down in turn 14. I thought that was a driving mistake.
He's stopping, he's slowing.
Over.
Alonso is slowing. Alonso with an issue, and he has lost positions, and he is pulling out of the way. And the smoke now billowing from that rear right brake on Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin. He'll try and coast it back to the pits, but not the start to the Chinese Grand Prix that Fernando Alonso would have wanted.
Yeah, we've seen this a couple of times over the years, haven't we? Most famously with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I can overbrake. No brakes.
Yeah, most famously with Max Verstappen in Australia last season, where Carlos Sainz famously won 2 weeks after having appendicitis surgery. So another case of that.
We're just seeing a replay of the start. George Russell really did give Oscar Piastri a hard time, but Russell ultimately had to get out of it, and that allowed Lando Norris to squeeze around the outside. We see the Ferraris coming together at the tip of the apex. Now, also, it was a bit of a disaster start for the Sauber drivers as well. Nico Hülkenberg falling from 12th down to 19th. Bortoletto having to come into the pits as well, and I think we just saw it. One of the Saubers almost having a huge moment coming out from turn 2, and this is the sound on George Russell's Mercedes getting squeezed before he even turns right.
I'm just showing Harry the message that I sent Oscar last night. Look at that. Hard right at the start to cover George. Well done, Oscar. You listened. Well done.
Sam Bird giving Oscar Piastri some tips there at the start. There we go. It seems to have paid off for him. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari. Good start from the 7-time champion. He has to move to the right-hand side as Verstappen takes the outside line, but it pays off for Hamilton, who has a nice clear view in front of him. But then as he turns right at the tip of the apex, there is the contact, front left wing to rear right.
I've been hit by someone.
And I'm afraid that someone was your teammate, Lewis, but it feels like if he hasn't had a puncture yet, he would have got away with that one.
So Verstappen had a moment on the outside of turn 1. He had a bit of a snap, and that's what allowed Hamilton to get inside him and take that position. At the front, the top 3 are running nose to tail pretty much. Hamilton's dropping back to nearly 2 seconds behind him. Leclerc's hanging on really well despite that broken front wing, right on the back of Hamilton.
Yeah, he really is, as we are still looking at replays, but it is less than a second between Oscar Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Russell a couple of tenths behind Lando Norris. Then, as Andrew says, there's a little bit of a gap to Hamilton. Now, this is the sound of Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber, who completely loses his car and into the gravel trap as Fernando Alonso comes in to retire his car. Coming through the fast right-hander, I think it was a turn 7 and 8 for Bortoleto, just completely losing it. He came into the pits at the end of lap 1 and is now last in 19th place. His teammate Nico Hülkenberg had an almighty moment coming out of the exit of turns 3 and 4. Managed to hold on to it, but that lost him a huge heap of places. He's down to 18th place. We're now down to 19 cars with Alonso coming in to retire. At the top of the field, though, half a second the gap as they come through the right-hander on turn 6. Oscar Piastri leads the Chinese Grand Prix. Then it's Lando Norris hunting his teammate down. George Russell, 1.1 seconds adrift of the top 2. Then comes Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc holding firm in 5th still.
Now, I'm really interested to see this fight between the McLarens, because I think fundamentally Norris has been slightly quicker than Piastri this weekend. He's just been finding the car a bit difficult to string a lap together. But in the race, you're not on as sharp an edge as you are in qualifying. So will that underlying pace of Norris's translate into the race? Will it help him challenge his teammate?
Well, yesterday, if the sprint race is anything to go by, Oscar Piastri was better at the tyre management. Lando yesterday suffered terribly with that front graining and wasn't typically quick yesterday, as we see another yellow flag out on track. We haven't seen, and now it's gone green again. But yeah, yesterday Oscar was better. I know that Lando has a little bit more pace in him. Also, Oscar has the priority when it comes to first pit stop and when he takes it.
Lap 6 of 56 of the Chinese Grand Prix now becoming lap 7 as Oscar Piastri crosses the line. A second the gap now to Lando Norris. He's managed to pull a little bit on his teammate last lap around. Of course, beneficial for Piastri to be running in clear air on these tyres. Just allows him to nurse them a little bit more. Lando Norris will be feeling more degradation as he runs in the hot air that is coming off the back of his McLaren teammate. Russell is 3rd. Then it's the 2 Ferraris, Hamilton ahead of Leclerc. Verstappen in 6th. They're not really making any inroads to the Ferraris ahead of him. Antonelli is 7th. Then comes Tsunoda and Hadjar. Esteban Ocon is the top 10 right now. Alex Albon just behind him, 0.6 of a second the gap in 11th. Then it's Gasly, Stroll, Sainz, Behrman the top 15. Behrman and Stroll both on the hard tyres going long into this race. Jack Doohan is 16th. Liam Lawson also electing to go on the hard tyre, having started from the pits. He'll be hoping to go for as long as possible and make up positions. 17th ahead of the 2 Saubers.
I want to use my front.
We don't want to.
Well, I want to.
Okay, do what you need to do.
So that was Yuki Tsunoda. Sam, can you explain that? The Japanese driver, he wants to use more front. What does that mean?
I have no idea what that means, to be honest.
Is that front tyre? Is that more
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe he wants to have more rotation in the car. The team is saying that they don't think that's wise. But at the end of the day, he's the one in the car feeling the situation. He's gone against what the team have suggested, and it looks like he's going to be going ahead with trying to implement a little bit more rotation in his RB.
I think he wants to try and catch up to Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes ahead of him, because behind Tsunoda really is the entire rest of the field, because you have Hadjar right there, then Ocon, Albon, Gasly, Stroll, Sainz, all really within close quarters of each other as they head down that long back straight, just under 1.5 kilometres as we start lap 8 of 56. Let's see if Tsunoda does use more front end. He's got his teammate behind him who could help him out a little bit and just try and hold up a fast charging Haas in Esteban Ocon. Haas will be pleased by this turnaround off the back of a really poor weekend for them in Australia.
Lewis Hamilton reporting a little bit of graining already occurring on that front left medium compound tyre, something he managed so well yesterday. I'm sure everybody else is complaining and hurting as well.
1.4 seconds the gap now up front. It was half a second, but Piastri managing his pace well and able to extend the gap to his teammate Lando Norris. But McLaren leading this Grand Prix. Norris 3rd, then it's Hamilton, Leclerc the top 5, Verstappen, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Hadjar and Ocon the top 10. Albon's chasing down Ocon in 11th. Here is Norris.
Starting to struggle a little left front.
As Lando Norris saying he's struggling a little with his left front tyre. It won't be helping him that he is running behind his teammate. That Piastri will get that benefit, won't he, of being in the clear air?
The estimation with clear air is it can be an advantage of as much as half a second a lap.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really good. And obviously when you're losing downforce over the front wing as a consequence of being behind someone, that's only going to put more strain on the front tyres and exacerbate that graining situation.
And considering he is a front wing end plate down, Charles Leclerc is really holding firm behind his teammate within a second, getting the DRS off the back of Lewis Hamilton as they head down to turn one as the sun shines from in between the cloud cover above this Shanghai International Circuit. I'm not sure Hamilton is feeling too quick out there because Leclerc is all over the back of him.
One of the interesting things about these front wings on these cars since 2022 is that the end plate, which used to be before 2022 something really important. If you lost the end plate, you lost a massive amount of downforce. You couldn't carry on. These days, the end plate doesn't do that much. Here's Albon's radio.
Happy with tyres for now, but we are on the cricket.
Yeah, I'm good. I am good. I am better than everyone. Let's relax. I am very comfortable.
Okay, so that's Alex Albon saying he's happy with his tyres, he's not worried about his fronts. Anyway, yes, so the end plate is not so much of a performance-defining aspect of the front wing as it used to be before 2022. So that's how Leclerc is able to carry on in this way.
One of the things that is surprising me the most, Harry, is the fact that Leclerc not only kept his position in front of Verstappen with a broken front wing, he's managed to pull away. Max Verstappen falling back over 4 seconds now, the gap between Leclerc and Verstappen.
Lap 9 of 56. You just heard Alex Albon on the radio saying he's better than everyone when it comes to tyres, and he's feeling very comfortable out there. He's down 11th right now. He's in a bit of a DRS train behind Esteban Ocon, and they're all tucked up behind the racing bull of Isaac Hadjar, the French rookie who started 7th, lost a couple of positions on the opening lap, down to 9th. Still, decent result it would be if both racing bulls could finish in the top 10, but Ocon is right there. Then comes Albon, who turns 29 today, so he would like a nice 29th birthday present in the form of some points. Back-to-back points finishes could it be for the London-born Thai racer? Behind Albon is Gasly, who is right there too, half a second and piling on the pressure. Stroll is also keeping the pace up, even though he's on the harder, slower tyre. Then comes Carlos Sainz, who is 14th ahead of Ollie Behrman, the top 15. A couple of radio messages just coming in. Plan A for Oscar Piastri, but Plan B, I think that was for Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari. So we thought this race was going to be a two-stopper, but let's see how that pans out with the tyre degradation. Piastri, if he's on his initial plan, so far so good for the Australian, who leads by 1.7 seconds out in front from his teammate Lando Norris. Russell currently in third with the two Ferraris. This is the sound of one of them, Charles Leclerc, on the radio.
If it stays like this, I won't plan it.
So having been told, plan B, Leclerc, actually, no. He wants to stay on plan A if it's all well and good.
So I think plan B was obviously an early stop to try and get a bit of an undercut, and that would be more difficult with a wing change. But he seems happy with his pace right now. He's saying, guys, I can stay on plan, and he's keeping with Lewis Hamilton, even with a front wing that is nearly drooping on the ground, scraping around. He's lost downforce, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him as much as I thought.
Has he lost downforce though? I mean, they might even leave the wing in place as it is.
It's a bit of an improvement almost. FIA might be looking at this after the race. We shall see. And he just seems, he actually has to have a few moments on the steering wheel, does Charles Leclerc, just trying to get it turned in at the top of the hill at the apex of turn 1. Still neat and tidy.
So it would be too much traffic, so we stick to plan B.
Okay, plan B then for Charles Leclerc as we get our first proper pit stop. It's an early call though for Pierre Gasly, who comes into the Alpine pit garage and puts on the hard tyres. I wonder if they pitted Gasly just to get him out of the traffic that he was in, because he was a part of that DRS train in the mid-pack.
Just a word, by the way, for Max Verstappen. He was saying, as we were saying before the start of the race, that he needed the cars in front of him to retire to have any chance of winning. Well, he's still in 6th place, but he's 5 seconds behind Leclerc. He's really being dropped by that lead group of McLaren, Russell and the two Ferraris.
Yeah, he's got Kimi Antonelli behind him, but he's a further 1.7 seconds back. So, well, Mercedes will be hoping Antonelli might be able to reel in Verstappen and try and improve his performance at the moment. He's ahead of Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar in 9th. Esteban Ocon still holding on to that 10th place. Pierre Gasly has pitted and fed out into 18th spot, just ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto, who pitted at the end of lap 1 after his off. There was a bit of movement in the Ferrari pit lane with some of the mechanics looking at a front wing.
Do you think we can make a plan C target lap?
At the moment, I think it might be possible.
So Piastri, do you think you can make the plan C target? At the moment, it's possible for Oscar Piastri. So we've had plan A, plan B, now we're already on plan C.
Don't ask me what plan C is. Don't ask me. But what what Charles Leclerc is able to do at the moment is he's building that buffer to Verstappen, so when he comes in to do that wing change, he's got the potential of staying ahead of Max Verstappen right now with the buffer that he's building up.
Tsunoda's into the pit, so is Ocon and Doohan. This is slightly earlier than we expected. I'm wondering if plan A was actually a 2-stop, and plan C might well be a 1-stop, with plan, what do we now be? Maybe a 3-stop, because I think the tyre degradation might be slightly higher than what some of the drivers have anticipated.
Well, it was pretty big yesterday, wasn't it? I can't see a 1-stop happening today. I really can't, Harry. I think
maybe only for Piastri.
I think it's too risky. They've got the pace to do what everybody else does and still win the Grand Prix. I don't know why you'd put yourself under unnecessary risk.
The teams are thinking about a 1-stop. One of the reasons is that the hard tyre this weekend is the C2, so the sort of second hardest in Pirelli's range. It's a brand new tyre for this year. No one's raced on it yet. The only time people have run it was in Bahrain pre-season testing, and it proved to be quite a good tyre around Bahrain. Now, this is a very, very different track. Bahrain is rear limited, so it's traction that your problem is. Here it's front limited. We've been talking about that all the race so far. So graining at the front, but they are open-minded about how good that hard tyre might be today.
Lap 13 of 56. It's Oscar Piastri who leads by 2 seconds to Lando Norris. Then it's George Russell. The 2 Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc are the top 5. We are seeing the first pit stops happen. Antonelli's just come in further back along with Hadjar, and most of the midfield have now been coming in slightly earlier than anticipated. The other thing for Charles Leclerc, if he does pit, the pit loss is about just under 24 seconds under a green flag. If they do change that front wing, it's going to be even longer of a pit stop, so he's going to lose ground, but he's got about an extra 5 seconds to play with Max Verstappen behind, so it's going to be nip and tuck, and you can see why they might actually be thinking, well, if we don't have to change the front wing, we don't really need to.
No, my concern is that if it gets any worse,
he'll get a black and orange flag.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing to note, George Russell has just stomped on the throttle, just on the fastest lap of the race. Are we going to be expecting him in next time round?
I'll tell you what, it's gone well for Yuki Tsunoda in the Racing Bull, pitting early and getting the undercut on Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. The Japanese driver said he wanted to use more front end. Feels like he had more pace, and he's made it work.
These laps are good.
Oh, what's he losing a bit of time now?
And that was Charles Leclerc, I think, subtly hinting that he's quicker than Lewis Hamilton, who is ahead of him.
Yeah, good luck getting Lewis out of the way, Charles. That's not going to work.
Well, this is going to be an interesting dynamic going forward. Who is the number 1? Who is the number 2 in that team? And have they just solved the problem? Lewis Hamilton has been told to come into the pits at the end of this lap. So we will see Hamilton in, and he is already in. That unleashes Charles Leclerc. Verstappen also pits as well from 6th place. So it will be a race to the end of the pit lane. The Ferrari is in, hits his markers, the 7-time champion, with his yellow helmet just peeking out, and he is released just in time for Max Verstappen to sweep in to his pit box. 2.5 second stop for Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen is sent away well too, and both heading out now back to rejoin this race. Lewis Hamilton sweeps through turn 1 now onto the hard tyre for the 7-time champion, as further back they're just getting out ahead of a lovely scrap in the midfield between Tsunoda and Kimi Antonelli, and also the Haas is in that fight as well. I think that's Esteban Ocon, and then comes, well, the rest of the midfield with the Alpine and the other Racing Bull car. But Piastri, Sam, has been told to pit.
Absolutely, Oscar Piastri boxing this lap. Clearly those medium tyres are complaining enough.
He's going to go 1 stop. Keep it sending. Left, clearing up.
So George Russell does think it could go one stop. He's still third. He's just set the fastest lap, as you said, Sam, and he thinks, well, if we can get through this period of graining, it will start to clear up and the tyre will come back to him.
Yeah, potentially. I thought that he was putting his foot down just to get the last bit of life out of those tyres, but maybe he's looked after them in a way that he can run through the graining. Oh, no.
Ignore all of that. He's just been told to pit.
Yeah.
And in comes Oscar Piastri, our race leader. That allows Lando Norris to take the lead of the Chinese Grand Prix at the end of lap 14 into 15. And it's a slightly slow start for Oscar Piastri. I think that was rear left, slightly slow on for the Australian, who goes on to the hard tyre. George Russell, having said maybe it could turn to a one-stop. No, he's come into the pits and has also put on the hard tyre.
It's not necessarily no. It could still be a one-stop.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Yeah. It could go. It's a long way to go, though. Lap 15 of 56 at the Chinese Grand Prix. Lando Norris now leads, having not pitted yet, with Charles Leclerc in second, also not pitting, and Alex Albon and the Williams staying out there. He was quite happy with his tyres a few laps ago, and still out there on track, up into third. Oscar Piastri peels out in fourth place, and the first of the pit stoppers, Kimi Antonelli, a little further back, is down in 15th place, and he's got Isaac Hadjar for company in a nice little midfield scrap. Meanwhile, his teammate has come out in 7th place and was just feeling a little bit of pressure from Ollie Behrman, but manages to hold that fight off. And speaking of Behrman in the Haas, this is the sound of his teammate Ocon down the back straight with the aid of DRS, closing up to Kimi Antonelli down the inside at the end of that back straight into the right-hander of turn 14. It's not really been the race to report home about for Antonelli so far, who Tsunoda has jumped him in the pits, and Antonelli was squeezing him all the way to the right-hand side, so much so that Esteban Ocon digs a wheel into the grass and kicks up the dust, and manages, though, to still make the move stick as the front two come in. Norris pits along with Charles Leclerc. And into the pits comes the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc. Norris is released. Let's see where this puts Oscar Piastri. He's currently in fourth, is the Australian who was leading this race before he pitted
No front wing change. No front wing change.
No front wing change. It's going to be tight, though, on the exit. Piastri coming into the sweeper of the right-hander of turn one first. Then comes Lando Norris, who almost has his front wing chopped off. But Norris under pressure from George Russell, but they're both getting balked by the sole remaining Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. Down the inside for Russell, almost into the back of Stroll, and Norris loses out to George Russell, and they've both got Stroll in front of them still. Stroll doesn't have to get out of the way. This is technically a battle for position. Down the inside into the right-hander of turn 6. Russell gets through on the Canadian, and Norris will try and follow through, but Stroll isn't making this easy as they sweep through the left-hander of 7 round the outside. That becomes the inside for Norris, who gets through, but he has lost out there to George Russell, who gets back in front of the McLaren. The driver in the papaya car managed to pip the Mercedes on lap 1, but Russell is now back through.
Shows the power of the undercut, doesn't it? I think it's an undercut kind of race. Everybody that's pitted early has gained positions.
Yeah, and Hamilton still ahead of Charles Leclerc. No front wing change, as you spotted, Sam. So the Ferraris are status quo, still waiting for a couple of cars to come into the pits. Alex Albon, on his birthday, currently leads this Grand Prix. The Williams driver has stayed out on the track. Let's see how far he can go into this race. But it is Albon who leads, but it's Piastri with that net lead as they two Ferraris try and negotiate Ollie Behrman's Haas, who is running long into this race, having started on the hard tyre, and they both get through on the British driver who made his Formula 1 debut for Ferrari last year, replacing Carlos Sainz. Lap 17 of 56. Albon leads. He hasn't pitted, so Piastri is the net leader. Then it's Russell, Norris, Stroll, who hasn't pitted, his 5th. Ahead of Sainz, also yet to pit. Then come the two Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc. Behrman is yet to pit in 9th. Verstappen is 10th. Lawson started from the pit lane, yet to pit, up into 11th. Ahead of Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, Ocon, Antonelli, who's lost 2 positions having come out of the pits, and that might well see him fall out of the points once it all evens out. Hadjar is 16th ahead of Gasly, Doohan, Bortoletto. 19 drivers left in this race, with 1 retirement in the form of Fernando Alonso with brake issues early on in this Grand Prix.
Could both Williams cars be trying to do a one-stop this afternoon? Now, that's what I think is going to be happening.
I think so. We heard Alex Albon on the radio earlier on saying he was very happy with his tyres. What did you make, Sam, of Russell and Norris coming out of the pits? And Lance Stroll doesn't have to get out of the way. Blue flags won't be being shown to him. He's not being lapped. That is technically for position. Stroll didn't make that particularly easy for those two. And why should he? He's racing, as you've just said, he's racing for position. He's doing his own thing for his team and for himself. But, you know, really good move by George Russell, I've got to say. Opportunistic, took the wide line through turn 1 and made it stick. Oh, and down the inside of Carlos Sainz goes Lewis Hamilton to make the move up into 6th. Leclerc goes through as well. Back onto the start-finish straight. George Russell is under pressure once more from Lando Norris, who has the aid of the DRS, who moves to the inside, gets squeezed to the pit wall. What a move for Lando Norris. Hits the brakes and into turn 1 through the right-hander. The McLaren is through. The Mercedes falls back. Norris making a statement there, and up to 3rd. Russell down to 4th. He's putting a statement out there, isn't he, Lando? What a move down the inside. Bold, brave. Now, can he get onto the back of Oscar Piastri?
The other person making a statement is Charles Leclerc. I want to give a real shout out to him. He's got a broken front wing. He's right up behind Lewis Hamilton, harrying him to try and take that position from his, from, I was going to say Ferrari team leader, but he's not the Ferrari team leader, Lewis Hamilton, is he? They're equal number 1s, are allowed to race. This is it's mouth-watering stuff with the Ferraris, and very impressive drive from Charles Leclerc so far. Equal number 1s. We'll see how long that lasts, shall we? Lap 18 of 56. Oscar Piastri has retaken the lead and has managed to overtake Alex Albon, who has yet to pit. We think the Williams driver is trying to go as long into this race as possible, but I think Carlos Sainz has called it quits and come into the pits for his first stop. He's fallen down to 18th now. The Williams driver still getting up to speed with his new surroundings. Albon still out there, though, and holding firm, but Norris is closing him in, and Albon won't want to work too hard to keep him behind, because if he works too hard, that'll take more life out of his tyres as Hamilton sweeps past Stroll at the end of the back straight. Yeah, Norris, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc are not in Albon's race. Albon is fighting for 1 point, maybe 2 at the end of this Grand Prix, and you know, if he's going to try and do a one-stop, the last thing he wants to do is fight faster cars that he's not in the race with and use up any additional tyre life. And I think that will be the same for Lance Stroll now, who started on the hard tyre and is staying out there. He's currently up in 7th, but the 2 Ferraris have just gone by him. Max Verstappen will be the next car to try and get through on Stroll in 8th. Behrman staying out long too. Liam Lawson in the Red Bull, who started from the pit lane, has just come in. Yeah, which surprises me, because he started on the hard compound tyre. I thought that he'd be running quite long into this Grand Prix, then putting on the medium. I don't understand why you would start on the hard and pit only a couple of laps after those people on the medium. Seems like a strange choice. A lot of head scratching going on down on that side of the garage for Liam Lawson. The pressure building already on the Kiwi. Let's see how his remainder of the race goes. He's fed out in 18th place, just ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. Lawson's put on the medium tyre. Piastri leads by 3.5 seconds to Alex Albon, who is not in this race, is staying out as long as possible. Not in the race for the lead, that is. He's very much in this race, and here he is on the radio. Oh, he's called it time now. He's just been told to box. That means to come into the pits as Lando Norris gets up to speeds of over 330 kilometres an hour with the aid of the drag reduction system. Moves to the inside of the Williams driver, who doesn't fight that one because he's coming into the pits to change his medium tyres for what we would suspect would be hard tyres, but it's a good stint length for Alex Albon, managing almost 20 laps on that medium tyre. In he comes. That unleashes Lando Norris up into 2nd. Now the gap between the 2 McLarens, 3.5 seconds. Russell will move himself up into 3rd, then Hamilton and Leclerc behind, followed by Stroll, Verstappen, Behrman, Tsunoda. The top 10 as it currently stands. I think Albon's overruled it, and Albon has stayed out. He's stayed out. Oh, he's overruled it. Yeah, absolutely right. He has stayed out. So Russell is still in 4th.
Past 40. When he's closer, yes.
Swapping cars for Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc in turn 14. That's at the end of the back straight. When he's closer is the reply from Lewis Hamilton. Well, he's already pretty close.
The politics are starting at Ferrari already, aren't they, Harry? But they're right to do this. At the moment, Charles Leclerc is the quicker car. If they want to try and get onto the back of George Russell and try and scrap for a third place finish today, I think at the moment, on the pace, Charles Leclerc's the car to do it.
Is that Lewis saying, I'm not letting him by? When he's closer, he's 7 tenths behind. I don't know. Let's see what happens. When was that radio transmission? Has he already refused to let him by once at turn 14? Because they delayed these radio transmissions. Let's see what happens now. They're coming onto the back straight.
Sweeping round turn 13 and onto that back straight, 1.4 kilometres. Charles Leclerc will get the aid of the DRS. George Russell.
You can't get the cars ahead. You can let us. It's right. Right now, I'm closing that a little bit.
I understood.
Lewis Hamilton refuses to follow the team orders, and Charles Leclerc stays behind his teammate. 5th for Hamilton, 6th for Leclerc.
What he was saying in that radio transmission was, if he doesn't get the cars ahead, you have to let me back past him. But he still hasn't let him past. So I don't know what's going on in Lewis Hamilton's cockpit at the moment.
Well, we saw this with the Mercedes.
He's doing it.
We want to swap this lap. Swap now.
I'll tell you when we're going to swap.
So Hamilton does do the swap into turn 1, but he doesn't do it lying down and make sure that he is the one who has the say of when it happens. Leclerc, though, is now through, as Albon waited 1 extra lap before he came into the pits, and he's sped out now.
So this is a case of, well, I'll let him by, but if he can't overtake George Russell, then I want the position back. And we saw this happen actually in Hungary between Valtteri Bottas in his Mercedes days and Lewis Hamilton. I think it was Lewis was allowed by Valtteri, and then he graciously let the position back again to Valtteri Bottas. I wonder if that'll be the case towards the end of this Grand Prix.
What's interesting about this is that Hamilton's transmission there saying, I'll decide when we swap. That is not how it works at Ferrari. It's ingrained in the team. The drivers race for Ferrari. Ferrari is more important than the drivers. It's the same for every team, but definitely more so at Ferrari. So there's a bit of a clash of culture going on there. It's going to be, I mean, we've been talking about this even before the season started. How's the Hamilton-Leclerc dynamic going to work at Ferrari? We're seeing the first points of tension here.
Lap 21 of 56, sorry Sam. Oscar Piastri leads Lando Norris, then it's George Russell in 3rd, then comes Charles Leclerc, and already 1.4 seconds the gap between the two Ferraris.
Yeah, Piastri's actually pulling away a little bit from Lando Norris, but back to Lewis Hamilton, I also think it's a little bit of frustration. The fact that he went and won the sprint yesterday and was comfortably quicker than everybody, much quicker than Charles Leclerc in the race yesterday, and now today he finds himself slower than his teammate. I think that we're just seeing a little bit of frustration. I don't think it's necessarily meant at the team, I'll decide, but it's the kind of thing you say when you're a little bit amped up in the car.
Well, let's see how it pans out. 1.2 seconds is the gap between Charles Leclerc, who is now chasing down George Russell, who has been left behind a little bit by the two McLarens. And as you've just pointed out, Piastri has now over a 4-second gap to his teammate Norris. You're listening to live coverage of the second round of the 2025 Formula One season. Here is Charles Leclerc on the radio.
It's a shame. The place is
Charles Leclerc, this is a shame. The pace is there.
Well done. I'm sorry about that. Keep pushing.
That was the radio message sent to Charles Leclerc just as Lewis Hamilton did move out of the way into turn 1. Leclerc almost guilt-tripping the team there, but he has got his broken front wing, which is just slightly dragging in the wind, but he hasn't been given any kind of black and orange flag, which means you've got to come in and repair your car. So as far as the FIA and Ferrari are concerned, he is free to carry on and is now trying to close down George Russell. This is the Chinese Grand Prix at the Shanghai International Circuit. It's lap 23 of 56. The two McLarens look like they've got the edge on the rest of the field right now. It's Piastri, Norris, Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton the top 5. Verstappen is 6th ahead of Stroll and Behrman, who've yet to pit. They're staying out for as long as they can. Tsunoda and Ocon round out the point scorers in the top 10.
Leclerc's not just trying to close down George Russell, he is closing down George Russell. 4 tenths on that first lap that he had clear of Hamilton. And by the way, Norris also made 4 tenths on Piastri on that previous lap.
I think Ferrari need to study this broken front wing after the weekend to find out why it's working out so well. He's driving an incredible race at the moment, Charles Leclerc. Really doing a good job, and a podium is definitely on the cards.
Let's see, that's the voice of the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird, along with the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, is myself, Harry Benjamin. This is the Chinese Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. Elsewhere in the sporting world, Wales have won the first match of their 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign. They beat Kazakhstan 3-1 in Cardiff, and Craig Bellamy has now overseen 4 wins and 3 draws since taking over as head coach. Also in the Women's Super League, Arsenal narrowed the gap on Chelsea at the top of the table to 5 points with a 4-0 thrashing of Liverpool. Everton were 3-0 winners over Crystal Palace, who remain bottom of the table. And there is more Women's Super League football action coming up later today on 5 Live from 2:30. Man City against Chelsea, and we'll also have updates of the Women's Six Nations, England against Italy from 2:30. That's coming up later this afternoon on 5 Live. But right now, this is the Chinese Grand Prix, the second round of the Formula One World Championship, where it looks like McLaren are currently having a clear route through to a 1-2, but we've still got a way to go in this Grand Prix. Lap 24 of 56 is Piastri, who started on pole position, who still holds the lead. 4 seconds the gap to Lando Norris. George Russell is third, coming under pressure slowly but surely from Charles Leclerc, and the Ferrari finally unleashed after team orders meant Lewis Hamilton gave up his position to Charles Leclerc. Hamilton fifth. Verstappen has had a tough race, fallen down to 6th. They had a Stroll and Behrman. They are staying out on the hard tyre. They're the 2 drivers in the top 10 who haven't pitted yet. Sonoda is 9th ahead of Esteban Ocon. Then it's Kimi Antonelli in 11th. Hajar, Albon, Gasly, Guin is the top 15. Carlos Sainz 16th ahead of Lawson and the 2 Salvers.
Give me some feedback, guys. Come on, I need feedback of where I'm losing. Just give me...
Exit 13, 1-3 to improve.
Yeah, you told me that already.
The rest seems good. Keep monitoring.
So Lewis Hamilton asking for feedback as to where he's slow. Turn 13, but elsewhere, according to his engineer, Ricky, he's all good.
Sometimes as a driver you need that feedback, and you want it quickly. Right, where am I losing compared to my teammate? What do I need to do? And Lewis Hamilton doesn't need to be coached. He's one of, if not the greatest driver that has ever lived. But even the likes of Lewis Hamilton, they need to be told sometimes, where is this time? What can I do to try and improve?
Saw some fiery radio messages going on between Hamilton and his engineer in Australia as they were just starting to get to know each other and how they communicate over the team radio. He was quick to put down any kind of tension between the two, and we've heard so many drivers get quite tense with their engineers. Max Verstappen, Jean-Pierre Lambiase always at each other on the radio, it seems. So Hamilton and his engineer constantly trying to know how to communicate with each other and learning with every lap that goes by. It's the beginning of a new partnership.
The other thing is, sometimes it doesn't matter whether you're told or not. You just can't do it. You're just not as quick on that day as your teammate, and that's what it looks like. Here's Leclerc's radio.
Mercedes is a truckster out of the truck. Unbelievable. The trucks that they have there is unbelievable.
That's Charles Leclerc saying the Mercedes is a dragster out of turn 12. Now that's the beginning of the right-hand loop that brings you on to the back straight, and Charles Leclerc has though been able to close in to within a second of George Russell now, so that fight is pending. Nice fight between the one-stoppers of Ollie Behrman and Lance Stroll. Behrman late on the brakes at the end of the back straight, locking up though. That saw him run deep and allowed the Aston Martin back through again. Both of those drivers have yet to pit and are staying out for as long as possible. May well be hoping for some kind of safety car intervention as well. They're still fighting it out on the road for 7th and 8th. We'll see where that evens out once they have pitted. Their window expected to be around lap 32 to 38. We're currently coming towards the end of lap 25.
Further down the order, we just saw a lovely switch back from Carlos Sainz on Jack Doohan. Went down the outside of turn 6 and got it swapped, and then down on the inside on the exit. which then turns into the outside into turn 7. Lovely by Carlos.
Yeah, nice medium speed corners making up that middle sector of this track. 19 cars left in it. Only one retirement in Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin, with suspected brake issues for the Spaniard having to ease off the throttle and coast his Aston Martin back into the pits to retire. That's 2 DNFs to kick-start the season for Fernando Alonso. Not what he would have wanted. He'll be hoping to bounce back in a couple of weeks' time when we head to Japan. This the end of the double-header that opens up the 2025 season before we have a week off and then head back to Japan. Lap 26, though, of 56 of the Chinese Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc has closed to within a second of George Russell, fighting for the podium places. Russell currently occupies third. Charles Leclerc with a broken front wing, but not crucially, not too broken that he has to come in and change it, has got great pace out there and is closing in on the British driver.
I think we should also emphasise, Harry, that George Russell in third place is closer to Lando Norris's McLaren in second, just less than 2 seconds, than Norris is to Piastri in the lead.
Right, let's take some action.
Yeah, we're on it, Ollie.
That's Ollie Behrman, who's down in 8th, asking his team to let's take some action to either try and find a way to make his strategy pay out, because I think he's getting a little bit frustrated, tucked up behind Lance Stroll's Aston Martin, who is in 7th. But it is the gap between the two McLarens, 4 seconds. Piastri managing this race very well so far. George Russell, though, is under pressure, half a second as they come in to the long right-hander of turn 1, as you then head downhill and carve your way back through the double left-hander 3 and 4 on the exit as you head slightly up the hill over the crest at turn 5. It's a slight right-hand kink downhill once more into the braking zone of the right-hander of turn 6. Action taken for Hassan Behrman as he comes into the pits for his first stop, gets rid of those hard tyres and will be fed out right towards the back of the pack. He's put the mediums on. Let's see if he can go all the way to the end on those. Lap 27 of 56 will still be a tough ask for Behrman.
Looks like Charles Leclerc is using a lot more apex curb to try and help rotate that car in comparison to Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in front of him.
Coming through the loop of 12 and 13, which ejects you out onto the back finish straight, getting up to speeds of almost 300 or just over 330 kilometers an hour. And it will be Charles Leclerc who will have the advantage. I wonder if he was within a second at the DRS detection point. I think he would have been. Yes, he was, as the rear wing flap does fly open, closes in under braking, takes a much tighter line to the apex. Russell almost reacting quite late to a possible lunge from Charles Leclerc there.
No, I think that was a mistake. I think he's just lost the rear on at the end of braking and not nearly hit George Russell, but when you have that kind of oversteer, he's got no choice but to turn in early and try and get to the apex.
But that has allowed Charles Leclerc to once again close up even further. And you're right, that Mercedes is looking a little bit tentative coming through the middle of the corners. That rear end just sticking out, but then it's able to get such good traction on the exit, though. And that's what Charles Leclerc is struggling to keep up with. It's the drive out of the corners that Mercedes has. And the Ferrari driver catches up, but then Russell is just able to pull away on the exit.
But the Ferrari does look a little bit loose mid to end of braking. What that will do is that'll add a little bit more surface temperature to those rear tyres. Then, when you ask for the loud pedal on exits, the rear tyres are already a little bit too hot or hotter than what you want them, making traction just that little bit more difficult.
Well, another overtaking point to come shortly. Norris has just managed to close in on Piastri slightly by about half a second. The gap was 4 seconds. It's now just under 3.5. Norris taking the fastest lap as well as it currently stands. But here we go then. Another chance for Charles Leclerc onto the back straight. The DRS line will arrive before he can't switch it on, and now he can.
Okay, Lando, we'd like to use some of that pace up, please.
Yeah, but I don't want to just push into the dirty air of Oscar again.
So Norris, it seems, does have more pace than he's showing, but he doesn't want to go into that dirty air. Just describe for us, Sam, what is this dirty air? What does it do to the car?
So these cars are so aerodynamically dependent that you want that clean air flowing over your car. If you run close behind somebody, you're not getting that air over your front wing, effectively taking downforce away from you, and then you're having to use more mechanical grip to try and do the same lap time. Then that will hurt tyre performance.
3.3 seconds is that gap between Piastri and Norris now. So let's see how Norris overcomes that. The team perhaps just telling him to pick up the pace with Leclerc charging through and imminent of an overtake for Russell. But he's still not able to do it yet.
So they're just worried about Russell behind there. They want to make sure Norris has got some clear space to make that pit stop when it comes, the second pit stop. I don't think they expect him to challenge Piastri. They're quite happy with the drivers running 1 and 2 at the moment. They don't mind them racing, but that's not what it's about. It's about keeping them clear of Russell so there's no risk of Russell getting them at a pit stop like he did last time.
Just over halfway distance now, lap 29 of 56. Here is Norris on the radio.
And Lando, we've asked for the car ahead to help you.
That was Will Joseph on the radio talking to Lando Norris, saying we've asked the car ahead, his teammate Oscar Piastri, to help you. What could that help be?
So what I think that means is Piastri isn't using all his pace either, so accelerate, go faster, give Norris some space to Russell, and then we're both making sure we're keeping 1 and 2 at the next pit stops.
So McLaren really trying to run this race as best as they can from the head of the field. George Russell has just pulled time on Charles Leclerc, who's now fallen back by 1.5 seconds to Russell. He was within a second, was Leclerc, chasing down Russell.
I think the front three now are trying to do a little bit of a breakaway. Oscar Piastri has put his foot down, done his fastest lap of the race with a 1:36.5. Lando Norris the same. And then George Russell 1/10 slower than those. And that's 8/10 clear of what Charles Leclerc was able to do on the last lap.
Picking up the pace as we get over the halfway mark. It's lap 30 of 56 at the Chinese Grand Prix. It's Piastri, Norris. It's a McLaren 1-2. Russell is third. Picking up the pace, Charles Leclerc, who was hunting down Russell, now falling back slightly. Lewis Hamilton, having let through his teammate to try and chase down the Mercedes driver, has now settled in fifth ahead of Max Verstappen, who we've not seen or heard much from at all in this race, having started fourth, falling down to sixth. That Red Bull just doesn't look like it's got the pace to match the teams ahead of it. Then after him comes Lance Stroll, who is staying out on track as long as he can and doing a good run of it as well on that hard tyre. Then comes Tsunoda, Ocon and Antonelli, the top 10. Just a little bit of a moment for Charles Leclerc a lap or so ago. That would have lost him time coming through, what was that, at turn 14?
Yeah, that's how Russell made that gap. It wasn't because he went particularly faster. I mean, he did do his fastest lap of the race, but it wasn't like blisteringly accelerating away from Leclerc, so Leclerc made a mistake.
So, yeah, Leclerc making a mistake, losing the car slightly on the exit, running deep into turn 14. 1.8 seconds back now from George Russell as we embark on lap 31. This is BBC Radio 5 Live's coverage of Formula 1. Let's bring you up to speed with the latest sports news elsewhere. Wales are up and running in their 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign. They beat Kazakhstan 3-1 in Cardiff, having had a scare at 1-1. Tonight also sees the Nations League quarter-final second legs played, while Scotland have a 1-0 lead over Greece as they try to stay in Nations League A. The second leg of their playoff kicks off at 5 o'clock. Jack Draper is also out of the Miami Open tennis. Britain's newly crowned Indian Wells champion was beaten by teenager Jakub Mensik in the second round. That's what's happening in the tennis. And in the Formula 1, coming into the pit lane is the second Red Bull of Liam Lawson, the New Zealander who started from the pit lane, pitted rather early, we thought, on the hard tyre, went onto the medium and has now come in on lap 30, turning to 31, and put on another set of those medium tyres and feeds out behind the Sauber of Nico Hülkenberg into 18th spot. He's put on the hard, apologies, he's put on the hard tyre again to go to the end.
It's the weirdest strategy that they've done for Liam Lawson. I don't know whether it's because he was simply massively struggling with tyre degradation, but he's made no ground whatsoever. It's not like he's been pushing forwards and using the tyre. He's exactly where he started, and we see Ollie Behrman here doing a lovely switchback on Liam Lawson just before he came in the pits. Look at this, down the outside into the hairpin and then back on the inside.
Ciao.
Nice one, Ollie.
That was Behrman saying ciao on the radio, and a nice one, Ollie, is received back to him by his race engineer, his dad, David, watching at the back of the garage. A better weekend so far from Ollie Behrman, who had a rough start to his rookie campaign as well in Australia, crashing the car quite heavily twice over the course of the Melbourne weekend. He hasn't got quite the same pace as his teammate Esteban Ocon. He didn't in qualifying. His teammate Esteban Ocon currently up in 9th place, so Haas could be looking at their first points of the season if it ends like this, but less than halfway to go now, and still anything can happen in this Grand Prix. The two McLarens have both picked up the pace. It's 2.5 seconds the gap between the two. Oscar Piastri told to speed up to help his teammate Lando Norris. They're still expecting to make another pit stop. George Russell holding firm in third. Charles Leclerc has now fallen back to 2 seconds adrift from the Mercedes man. Then comes Lewis Hamilton, Verstappen 6. Stroll is really running a good race on these hard tyres, holding 7th place ahead of Yuki Tsunoda 3 seconds back in 8th. Then Ocon and Antonelli the top 10. As Behrman starts to make his way through the field on the medium tyre, trying to line up Jack Doohan.
Go for plan C.
Well, can you tell him to just speed up a little bit, because I'm in a dirty air, I don't much guys.
Plan C then for Lando Norris, asking Oscar Piastri to speed up to allow Norris to not be so much in the dirty air and eat up his tyres more. So trying to go longer into this race and to the end.
I think so. I think that's probably the end game now for McLaren. I also think that Lando now knows that, and barring a disaster, he's going to be coming second today. I think that's kind of locked in. He just wants Oscar Piastri to speed up so that he can run a comfortable race and he's not going to be hurting his tyres. As we see another switchback from Ollie Behrman. He absolutely loves that move down into turn 14, doing the over and under. What a great race he's actually having now.
I wonder if we're going to get another ciao on the radio in a few moments' time. Lovely move from Behrman, who is on the quicker tyre, the medium tyre, and has just made his way up into 15th over Jack Doohan's Alpine, who falls down to 16th. Behrman's next target might be a little harder in Carlos Sainz in the Williams. Now, this is the sound of Liam Lawson a few moments ago, coming out of the exit of turns 3 and 4, over the crest at 5, looking at the back of Nico Hülkenberg's Sauber down the inside into turn 6, and it's a nice, neat and tidy move for Lawson. Hülkenberg doesn't fight that one too hard, but the Red Bull should have that pace advantage anyway over the Sauber, as Lawson continues to try and salvage something from this Grand Prix. What's clear though at Red Bull is that they don't have the pace, with Verstappen also in 6th, and what we always say about Verstappen, he's able to maximise whatever he's given, and right now if he's maximising that car, at best it's 6th place.
Well, he's got the 4th quickest car around here this weekend, hasn't he, Max Verstappen?
So far, the hard looks like it's robust. George behind has been told he's going to the end.
So going to the end is what Lando Norris is told that George Russell is doing. The hard tyre holding up more than perhaps the teams anticipated. So we're now expecting the top 3 at least to go to the very end.
This race has sort of settled down into a rather predictable pattern, I think, at the moment, with the top 6 drivers.
Don't say that, Andrew.
It's not looking like there's going to be a lot of action. Doesn't look like Charles Leclerc is going to be able to do anything about George Russell for the final podium place. So that raises an interesting point about whether they'll let Hamilton back past him or not. I suspect not, given that it doesn't change the team position, but let's see. Hadjar's coming into the pits for his stop, Harry.
But anything can happen still in Formula One, right? We still don't know what might happen over the course. Thanks, Andrew, for that one. Do stay with us for the remainder of this Chinese Grand Prix, because while Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris seem comfortable out in front, whenever there's a pit stop, there is jeopardy. And Isaac Hadjar has just made another pit stop, the French rookie, who hasn't had the race that he'd be hoping for, but at least he managed, he's managing 34 more laps so far than he did in Australia.
Right, this phase of the race is just a bit about patience. Then if we've got fuel and stuff later, we can have a go.
Patience, the name of the game for Lando Norris at this stage of the race. Then just hold on to your tyre life, and then we'll see what we have left at the end, and then maybe we might get a race on our hands.
Yeah, we might see something resemble an attempt at an overtake in the last 5-6 laps. But it's one thing catching, it's another thing overtaking. But also in 15 laps time, tyre life will be a completely different ballpark to where it is right now. Asking to push to get on the back of Oscar Piastri in say 10-15 laps is a completely different game.
Well, that's what's happening up at the front. Further back, Ollie Behrman is really the man that is making moves at the moment in the Haas, having just displaced Liam Lawson and Jack Doohan, has now worked his way up into 14th and is half a second behind the Williams of Carlos Sainz. So we might expect that move to come sooner rather than later. It's not over points at the moment, but see how it all shakes out as we continue to head into this race. They're just coming.
Update. Small risk of rain. Last 3 laps up to class 1.
Oh, we're back with the classes of rain again, aren't we? Small weather update, maybe a bit of rain as we look up to the sky. The cloud cover is there.
It's there all year round.
Yeah, I know. But we did have blue skies on Friday, though.
No, exactly. But class 1 isn't anything that these drivers will need to necessarily worry about. I mean, you saw that Max Verstappen actually tried running in class 3, class 4 rain in Australia. So class 1, I don't think it's anything to worry about. It's purely information for the drivers.
Just to reiterate, class 1 is just a light spattering.
Class 1 is you start to see it on your visor, but it's not affecting your pace. Class 2, a little bit more. Class 3, you're thinking of coming
a little bit more. Well, let's see how that unfolds. That's expected towards the end of this race then. Now, I mentioned Behrman a few moments ago. He is lining up Carlos Sainz in the Williams, who looks into his right mirror to see where the British rookie is. Behrman, who replaced Sainz at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in the Ferrari, makes the move down the inside. Carlos Sainz doesn't fight it too hard. Sainz will try the switchback. That's the move that Behrman's been pulling, though, on Lawson and Doohan the last couple of laps. But that gives Behrman the inside line for the final corner, and that is what he needed, and he gets the position. And another chow on the radio from Behrman. I think he's quite enjoying being out there.
He is indeed, as we see Yuki Tsunoda peeling in the pits and popping on another set of the hard compound tyres. Isaac Hadjar keeping with him through the first 36 laps of this race, and they're within, dare I say it, 1 second of each other. So decent job by both of these cars, although in 15th and 16th at the moment. We're expecting a couple more cars to try the 2-stop, though, in front of them.
Yeah, well, their problems for Racing Bulls will be the fact that Stroll is still out there on the hard tyre in 7th. Albon is ahead of them on the road now, and he's been saying that he's having great tyre life. So Albon expected to go to the very end. So I think Tsunoda, if he wants to get some points now, might well have to do a little bit of overtaking. And I think Racing Bulls have probably seen how Behrman is also now carving his way through the field. We'll see how that one shakes out. But the midfield fight then very much in the midst of their strategies. Let's see how the two Racing Bull drivers get on. It's Tsunoda in 15th, Hadjar actually with the fastest lap now down in 16th. They're ahead of Liam Lawson with the 2 Saubers languishing at the back after a disaster opening laps for both Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. Fernando Alonso has retired from this race.
Good pace now, Max. Better late than never. 20 laps remaining. Come on.
Verstappen's turned up the wick, I think. He's about 2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton now as Lance Stroll finally calls it a day, but I think it was a slightly slow stop. 3.2 seconds for the Canadian in the Aston Martin. He pits from 7th and is falling down the field now onto the hard tyre as he peels out of the pit lane. Can Tsunoda get in front of him? Crucially, I think he might well have made the jump on Tsunoda, but he'll be right behind him with the Japanese driver. This will be a crucial move for the Japanese to make on the Canadian, but at the moment Stroll has managed to hold that position ahead of Tsunoda, so staying out has managed to pay off so far for Lance Stroll, but his tyres will be a little bit colder, will take slightly longer to heat up on this lap.
But he will be on the medium compound because he's run the hard, so expect him to have really decent pace over the next 10 laps or so.
Yeah, this strategy might well be going away from Sonoda and Hajar. Let's see, after they were hoping to score big points last time out in Australia. At the moment, now down in 15th and 16th as we get a Ferrari coming in to the pits, and it's Lewis Hamilton who stamps on the pit limiter and makes his way down the pit lane, and he has called it. He's coming in to get rid of his hard tyres. He hits his markers. The Ferrari crew get to work. The car is lifted up onto the jacks, and another set of the hard tyre is put on. 2.3 seconds he is stationary for before he's set on his way once more. That props up Verstappen up into 5th. Hamilton should have clear air in front of him. He does. He gets out in time and ahead of the Haas of Esteban Ocon. Hamilton to the end now on the fresh set of hard tyres.
Meanwhile, at the front, Lando Norris has cut the gap to 2.4 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. So are we going to be seeing a late surge from Lando Norris? That was a decent stop and decent strategy, I think, from Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton. They had that free stop to Ocon. Why not take it and see if he can push on and see if Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell run out of tyres?
Yep, as he now pulls away from Ocon. Verstappen a little bit up the road now, this is the sound once more of Ollie Behrman, who is still carving his way through the field. His next target, and this would get him up into the top 10. This could really pay off for Haas with a double points finish. Behrman looking at the back of Pierre Gasly as he makes his way through the right-hander of turn 8.
Lando, from what we can see, our front left is a little bit worse than Oscar and Russell.
Yeah, like I see the first little bits of graining, but it feels okay for now still.
Okay, let's just be patient still, all right?
So we're still in that patient zone of the race for Lando Norris and McLaren, just not wanting to take too much life. The beginnings of graining starting to show on that front left.
So frustrating as a driver when that's the case. You know you can go quicker, but you're just so tyre limited that you don't dare go any quicker. It's a balancing act. There's a moment as we see Ollie Behrman down the inside, bold move into turn 14. And is he going to keep the move? No, I think Jack Doohan keeps it down the inside.
Yeah, it's Gasly.
No, it's
Gasly. They were wheel to wheel going into the left-hander. The Frenchman wasn't going to roll over easy on that one. The fight rolls on down to turn 1. Behrman with the advantage. Behrman to the inside with DRS, but Gasly swoops in and chops off the Haas driver, who closes in and almost nudges Gasly out of the corner through the left-hander, through turns 2 and 3. Now towards the crest of turn 5, the slight right-hand king, and Gasly was not willing to roll over for that one.
How's the tyre, Oscar? Can we do plan A?
I think we could, yeah.
As Piastri is saying he thinks he can go to the end. 2.4 seconds clear at the front.
We know what plan A is now.
There we go.
So we're
plan
working
A
out
to the
as
end.
we go along.
I'm looking forward to plan D, whoever's got that one.
Can you remember a couple of years ago when Ferrari had about 50 plans? They ran out of letters.
I think everyone remembers that, and I think Ferrari try and forget that they ever had that at one step. I don't think Lewis Hamilton will be too impressed if he's on plan V all of a sudden. But at the moment, for Hamilton, he's in 6th. He's just had a free pit stop technically, re-emerged behind Verstappen, but on a fresh set of hards. Leclerc is in 4th, having been let through by Hamilton to try and chase down George Russell. Hasn't been able to make that work. He has got a broken front wing, but that isn't hindering him really. So he's holding firm in 4th at the moment. Take 2 for Behrman versus Gasly. Gasly, learning from the last lap around, moves to the inside at the end of the back straight to defend from Behrman. Behrman tries to get the up and under, but he doesn't get the traction. Gasly has the inside for the 90-degree left-hander that sees you on to the start-finish straight, but Behrman will have the greater turn-in, the greater speed with the DRS. Moves to the right, then to the left. Gasly will have the inside. Behrman's through before they even turn in. Nice little scrap between these two as the Haas driver, after a couple of goes, gets through on Gasly and gets himself up into the top 10. Yeah,
good move by Ollie Behrman, and the Haas cars are actually working pretty well around this Chinese Grand Prix track out in Shanghai. I'm surprised at the lack of pace that Alpine are able to show at the moment, to be honest. I thought that they came on a little bit of form towards the end of last year, but so far this year, it's the same old struggles, same old lack of pace.
Yeah, both Alpines knocked out in Q1 for qualifying for this Grand Prix as well, and this is not what Pierre Gasly would have wanted to sign up for, having had the heady heights of that double podium in Sao Paulo towards the end of the year, managing to leapfrog Haas in the Constructors' Championship towards the end of the year, and now having to look at the back of the Haas once more, and both Haas's in the points, both Alpines out of the points.
But it wasn't just Sao Paulo, which was a very tricky race for everybody. It was wet and difficult, lots of people going off and making mistakes, but also they followed that up in Qatar with a superb job as well. They definitely found some pace, so I think there'll be quite a lot of work going on back at Alpine's headquarters to try and resolve this and get back up the order again, because right now they're towards the back of the midfield.
Yeah, Gasly is now 11th, and Jack Doohan, the rookie from Australia, is down in 14th. He is another driver that's come under huge pressure before he even turned a wheel in a Grand Prix car with Franco Colapinto signed as reserve.
But right, let's put this into context a little bit. Jack Doohan is 5 seconds behind his teammate, and everybody's saying that he's under pressure. Okay, I understand why, but I don't think it's fair, considering you look at, let's say, Kimi Antonelli, who everybody says is brilliant and wonderful, the next big thing, and he is. He's a great talent, but he's the best part of 30 seconds behind George Russell. So how's that fair when you're within touching distance of your teammate, and that's all the car can do? But going on reputation, Antonelli is going to be fine. I feel like sometimes these teams should back their drivers, give them time. He's done 2 Grand Prix, not even finished 2 Grand Prix.
I agree with you. I agree. I think that the pressure has come from the fact it's Flavio Briatore who is now sort of putting the strings at that team, and the signing of Colapinto, which was such a big money move to get him out of a Williams contract, having displayed good performances towards the end of last year. I think that's where the pressure has come, and I do agree. I don't think it's been handled very well at all.
No, and I think that there's other teammates of more established teams that need to have a look at themselves, not just Jack Doohan. I think that there's
Antonelli against Russell. There's, as we said, Lawson against Verstappen,
and that's one that stands out. Verstappen radio.
This is top pace now, Max. Keep going.
Yeah, Max Verstappen doing a decent job and actually starting to close in a little bit on Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton's now done the fastest lap of the race, but sits in a very lonely 6th place. Going back to the teammate thing, you look at Behrman doing a good job. You look at Doohan, I actually think he's doing a decent job compared to Gasly. So the ones that I think need to step it up in round 3 are definitely Liam Lawson. And actually, I've got to say, this race has been a little bit underwhelming for Kimi Antonelli. Had an amazing Australian Grand Prix, but to be that far back from George Russell, I think he'll come away from this race and it'll be a decent learning curve for him.
Yeah, worth mentioning that out of all the rookies, I think Jack Doohan is the only one who has any kind of experience around this Shanghai track before they arrived here on Friday. Also, the rookies, 6 of them in the field, straight on the back foot by it being a sprint weekend as well, only getting 1 hour's practice running before we went into qualifying for the sprint, slightly rejigged format for this weekend. So it will be, as you say, another big learning curve for all of the rookies in the field. Piastri leads lap 43 of 56 of the Chinese Grand Prix. He's got a 4-second gap over his teammate Lando Norris. The 2 McLarens very much managing their pace to get to the end of this race. George Russell is 3rd, Charles Leclerc is 4th, with Max Verstappen in 5th. Lewis Hamilton with a free pit stop a few laps ago on a new set of hard tyres has come out in 6th, ahead of Esteban Ocon, who was running a good race in 7th for Haas, ahead of Antonelli. Then comes Alex Albon and Ollie Behrman now up into the top 10. Gasly is 11th, ahead of Carlos Sainz. Then comes Lance Stroll, but not for too much longer. A nice move from the Canadian, who sweeps past Carlos Sainz's Williams and gets his Aston Martin up into 12th spot. Sainz down to 13th. Then comes Jack Doohan. Sonoda is 15th. I think Racing Bulls will be wondering what on earth happened to their race. Hadjar is 16th. Lawson 17th, having started from the pit lane, not able to make inroads. And the 2 Saubers, 18th for Hulkenberg, 19th for Bortoletto. Fernando Alonso, the only retirement with brake issues on his Aston Martin. He pulled out of the way and coasted himself back to the Aston Martin garage to park it up. Back-to-back DNFs for the Spaniard to start his 2025 season.
I still think Tsunoda could get towards the top 10. It just depends on whether other people's tyres fall off the cliff in these last 12 laps.
This is Tsunoda, who has been speaking to the media. I think it's good to point out the tone was rather in jest, but he was asked would he would he be up for racing the Red Bull in Japan next time out, and he said yes, 100%.
Just keep it up, Max. Obviously everybody trying to hang it out now. Don't know what can happen at the end.
That's Jean-Pierre Lambiase telling Max Verstappen to just hold on. Everybody else is hanging it out to try and get to the end of this race, and that is something that could absolutely benefit the likes of a Tsunoda. With a later pit stop, fresh tyres, he can push to the end now. He's just picked off Jack Doohan's Alpine. Next up will be Carlos Sainz, 1.5 seconds up the road, but he's got to overtake Sainz, Stroll, Gasly, and then Behrman. 4 cars to get himself up into that top 10. 2 of them are on medium tyres, but have they taken, particularly Behrman, a little bit too much out of them in his overtaking up the field over the last few laps? There's still a nice midfield scrap to come, I think, in these closing stages of the Chinese Grand Prix.
Yeah, I fancy Stroll for a point today. I know he's sitting in 12th at the moment and probably 6 or 7 seconds behind a points-paying position right now. But with those fresher medium compound tyres against some worn hards, I think he's got a shot if he gets a lick on.
That 45 of 46, Charles Leclerc still out there with that front wing. Lewis Hamilton, his teammate, now trying to close in. He was 5th and then pitted and had to give up 6th place, but give up 5th place and came out in 6th, ahead of Ocon though. So he had a decent sized gap, but he'll try and make inroads, but really 15.6 seconds behind Max Verstappen he is. He will want that place back, but it's going to be nip and tuck towards the end.
Yeah, but what they've done, I think it's quite clever, is they've forced the issue of all those drivers in front pretty much going, right, Charles Leclerc radio.
We're losing some time in turn 2. Maybe try one lap without using the curb.
Nope.
No, he likes using the curb there. But what Lewis Hamilton has done is he's pitted, he's closed that gap. Now I think 4th, 5th, maybe even George Russell would be close to being within his pit window. So he's forcing everybody to go, right, you're now one stopping, you've got to. And if you massively fall off the cliff, maybe he'll be there to pick up a position or 2 at the end. But they've got to massively fall off. But
yeah,
now
it's a gamble.
But now Verstappen and Leclerc, for sure, they can't pit. They've got to stick to the one stop, because otherwise they'll get swallowed up by Lewis Hamilton.
Let's see how that unfolds for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton. Just over 10 laps remaining of this Grand Prix till we get to lap 56 and the final one. It's currently lap 46 now that Piastri has just begun. 4.5 seconds the gap between himself and his teammate Lando Norris. The closest scraps really though are in the midfield at the moment. Yuki Tsunoda has just got through on Jack Doohan, is now trying to chase down Carlos Sainz, has got that gap down to a second now. It was 1.5. Jack Doohan is now under pressure from Isaac Hadjar.
Weather update, possible class a half on the last lap only.
A class and a half? What do you describe a class and a half of rain? Class 1.5?
Is that 0.5 or does he mean 1.5?
I interpreted it as mean half, so hardly any.
Hardly any, okay. Right, so hardly any rain then anticipated, but still enough to warn the drivers about it. Battling further back though, Hadjar forces Doohan to defend the inside at the end of turn 14. Lock up for Doohan, who has to run deep. That forces Hadjar off the road. Hadjar rejoins, and so too does Doohan. He keeps the place as a result. This the battle for 15th and 16th as they now come on to the start-finish straight. And there's a problem for Yuki Tsunoda and his Racing Bulls. A bit of the front wing has just popped up and lodged itself in the wing and is dragging down on the it's a bit of the branding, it's the Hugo branding on that Racing Bulls that has just popped off as he's chasing down Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, we've seen Charles Leclerc be able to drive around a front wing problem, but this one looks significantly worse because it's dragging onto the tyre. It hasn't actually completely dislodged itself yet from the car. So if he can get rid of that, he'll run to the end and have significant understeer. What he's lost are the main winglets on that front wing, whereas Charles Leclerc just lost the edge of the front wing. This is not good news for Yuki Tsunoda. I wonder if that's through contact or whether there's been a bit of a malfunction with the front wing.
And I wonder if there's been a lot of chat about flexi wings coming into this race, and I wonder if that Racing Bull front wing was maybe flexing a little too much. I think we joined it live when we saw it, so we'll see if we get given a replay. Meanwhile, Tsunoda's teammate Hadjar is shown the runoff area, and Tsunoda already then lacking pace and falling back now with that front wing problem as Doohan gets through. His teammate Isaac Hadjar will follow. Indeed, Hadjar might even try and move at the end of that back straight. Tsunoda gets out of the way, and that will be a real shame to Yuki Tsunoda's race. He'll come into the pits for a front wing change, I would suspect. Yes, he does. He goes straight on into the pit lane entry. You don't turn left for the final corner. Here he is on the radio.
Wait, front wing damage from what?
From what? Precisely, we would like to know. I think it really was just in the dirty air following Carlos Sainz down the main straight. It almost just seemed to pop and now is dragging as he makes his way into the Racing Bulls pit box as they get to work and remove that front wing. They'll put a fresh set of medium tyres on, but they're struggling to get that front wing off, and it's a slow stop. They get it on. They have to kick a bit of the wing away, the carbon fibre, before they fix it back on, and this is dropping Tsunoda all the way to the back of the field. So he's following Carlos Sainz and the wing is intact, and then it starts to flex and move, and then it almost bursts.
Yeah, just a catastrophic failure there from where it joins the chassis or the middle of the nose cone to the sides. Looks like it's just snapped.
Tsunoda then does rejoin this race with a new front wing, but he is now 19th and last on lap 48 of 56. Here's Norris.
My brake pedal's going a bit long. Yeah, the brake pedal's gone a lot longer.
So it's been going long the whole time. We see it has stepped, yes.
Yeah, no, it's a lot longer. Like I would say if it's slightly going.
No, I know. A lot longer. I know, mate.
Slight brake then issues for Lando Norris. Can you talk us through what he means by that, Sam, on the radio, starting to go a bit long? Clearly it's causing a little bit of tension.
Yeah, imagine you've used up your brake pads and the discs as well. Basically the amount of travel that you've got to use with your foot, it feels like you're having to press the brake pedal harder, firmer and longer to get the same stopping potential from the car. As a driver, you want something that's consistent, and it is a little bit alarming when you notice a significant brake wear, because you feel like at any point you might even run out of brakes.
From the FIA, the Doohan and Hadjar incident that we talked you through is being put under investigation, forcing another driver off the track. Doohan locking up and forcing Hadjar off.
So, lad, I know this is boring. So it's not the brake power that's changing, it's just the pedal that's going longer.
Okay, that's the latest update from Will Joseph on the pit wall to McLaren's Lando Norris. So how do you manage a thing like that then in these last stages of the race? Because whenever we've heard that before in a Grand Prix, when your brake pedal starts to go long, it's almost as like it's the beginning of something rather unsettling reliability-wise.
He's got 7 laps to go. I don't think McLaren sound overly concerned by it. There's another battle there with Isaac Hadjar again trying to fight with Jack Doohan, not getting the move done on this occasion, but yeah, Lando Norris's brake wear, it's concerning, but McLaren don't seem too alarmed. One thing that you could do is do a little bit of lift and coast, which means that the amount of energy you put through the brakes when you get to large braking zones is less than if you were to keep it flat out until the braking zone. Maybe 20-30 meters lift and coasts to reduce that top speed.
Well, the gap between the two McLarens, 3 seconds out in front. Piastri ahead of Norris. Battle still happening for Doohan and Hadjar, who are both under investigation. Doohan, a really late move to defend from Hadjar coming in to turn 14. Norris on the radio again.
So Lando, the brake pedal will continue to get long.
How big's the issue?
It'll get like half a mil longer per lap.
So there you go then. It will get half a mil longer per lap. We're on lap 50 of 56 of the Chinese Grand Prix. So Lando Norris and McLaren then having to nurse some brake problems to get themselves to the end of this Grand Prix. George Russell is 6.7 seconds behind Lando Norris. Then it's Charles Leclerc in fourth. Max Verstappen is the top 5 ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who had a late pit stop. Esteban Ocon is 7th. Kimi Antonelli 8th. Then Alex Albon and Ollie Behrman currently the point scorers. And that rounds out the top 10. Gasly is 11th. Stroll, Sainz. Then comes Doohan, still fighting with Isaac Hadjar for 15th and 14th.
Okay, it's potentially getting
to the floor.
So it's getting work. Basically, the front circuit will maintain pressure. The rear will lose, but you'll still get brake power. So you just have to be really cautious on the brakes. No risk.
Yeah, but I'm a lot quicker than...
Okay. He's saying that he can go a lot quicker, but when you've got an issue like that, and the team now sound a little bit more concerned. However, they think it's manageable. I think they're saying, look, don't worry about Oscar. Right now, you've cemented second. Just
get to the end.
Just get to the end, and we can talk about it afterwards, and we can resolve the issue.
Yeah, well, just peaking over 3 seconds now is the gap between Piastri and Norris. Just outside of that top 10 is Hadjar.
He moves. Moving so late, man.
Copy, is in the investigation.
That's Hadjar on the radio, who's still finding himself behind Jack Doohan and struggling to find a way forward. Indeed, Doohan has just been given a 10-second time penalty for forcing Hadjar off the track. So Hadjar will get a promotion of a position once the checkered flag flies, but he'll be wanting to try and do it on the track because Hadjar actually has Liam Lawson closing in on him as well in 16th.
So Lando, we see you're quick. This is one of those things we discussed, economies over the year. I'd rather finish second than not at all. No hard braking.
So this clearly is a bigger issue for Lando Norris and McLaren, who have the pace, but they cannot maximise it because they have to manage this brake issue, because the last thing they need is for the brake to fail, and they will pick up 0 points in that case.
Yeah, 18 is much better than 0, isn't it? Right now, take your 18 points, go home happy, and then have better brakes at the next race. Obviously, it is a concern, and he does need to manage it, obviously, for the next 6 laps.
Picking up 18 points would still keep Lando Norris in the lead of the Drivers' Championship after 2 rounds of the Formula 1 calendar. So they will be crucial points for them. Indeed, it would also keep McLaren ahead of the rest of the field.
Main loss, 8-9. That's where all the gain is, 4 tenths there.
Yeah, I know. You told me about 10 or 15 times. I know.
The Ferrari radios today have been great, haven't they? The other thing to think about is George Russell will have been told about Lando Norris's struggles. As I said that, though, Lando Norris gets within 2.8 seconds of Oscar Piastri, so clearly not struggling too much.
Verstappen is closed right up to the back of Charles Leclerc, and Leclerc is struggling out there. Verstappen is a man on a march, closes up through turns 1 and 2. The Ferrari takes a lot of curb on the exit, on the apex of turn 1, and Verstappen's Red Bull just looks so much more dominant than the Ferrari on the exit of 3 and 4, over the crest at 5, to the inside for Max Verstappen. No, has a little look, stays where he is, into the right-hander of 6. The next time he'll line up a move will be down that back straight.
Yeah, the traction of the Red Bull looks significantly better than that of the Ferrari. The point that I was going to make, Harry, is Russell will have been told about Norris's struggles, will have been told about these conversations, and I think Russell right now might be thinking, can I or should I be pushing to try and get onto the back of Norris? Because the last 2-3 laps, this might deteriorate even more.
2.8 seconds is the gap between Norris and George Russell, who is Norris is still holding in and around that 3-second gap between his teammate Oscar Piastri, who leads this race. More updates. Lando, you need to limit your brake pressure. That is what is coming through on the Norris team radio, so still trying to get him to manage that pace. Down towards the end of the back straight, hitting the brakes for turn 14. The right-hander is Max Verstappen. Can't close in enough to Charles Leclerc, but is all over the back of the Monegasque, the Ferrari, who is struggling for pace out there now. Round the final corner, the left-hander onto the main straight. Verstappen will get another dosage of DRS, that drag reduction system. The rear wing flap flies open. Verstappen has a little think to the inside, decides, no, I'll try it round the outside, and drags that Verstappen all the way to the edge, and Leclerc cuts right across him, and that allows Verstappen to tuck back in round the outside on the exit of the corner, and towards the crest of turn 5, Verstappen through on Leclerc. Lovely move. Leclerc tries to fight back though to the inside of 6, almost crashes into Verstappen, just about gets it slowed down. Leclerc sticking with Verstappen through the left-hander of 7, but now falls away from the back of the Dutchman. Nice fight between Verstappen and Leclerc. One out by the reigning champion.
Nice fight, but I thought it was all coming to blows at turn 6 there, didn't you, Harry? We see another replay into turn 1, just round the outside, hangs it on around the outside, and then keeps it nice and tight, overslows the car to get to the apex, and then again another round the outside move at turn 3. Super stuff by Max Verstappen, but the fight back was just as impressive from Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, that was lovely stuff from Verstappen and Leclerc. They've been fighting together since they were kids in karting, fighting it out in Shanghai in Formula 1 over 4th and 5th place, and now that Verstappen has got ahead of Leclerc, he's already pulled over a second to the Ferrari driver. Lap 54 of 56 then, as we continue to get into the closing stages of this Grand Prix. Piastri leads by 2.7 seconds to Lando Norris, managing brake problems in his McLaren. George Russell is 3rd, then comes Verstappen, Leclerc 5th, Hamilton now in 6th ahead of Esteban Ocon. A sublime result so far if he can hold on to it for the Frenchman in the Haas, ahead of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes. Hasn't been on par with his teammate throughout this race at all. Is down in 8th ahead of Alex Albon in 9th, and Ollie Behrman still holding on to that final points paying position in 10th.
Yeah, we haven't spoken much about Esteban Ocon, have we, today? Done a really solid job up in 7th. Didn't expect Haas to be almost the best of the rest of the cars, especially given their pre-season and round 1, but really good from Esteban Ocon and also Ollie Behrman, both in points paying positions.
Yeah, this would be Esteban Ocon's best finish in China if he can hold on to 7th place. And Haas, after coming away from Melbourne, felt like they had a really significant car issue. Well, it seems like they may have been able to turn that around for this Grand Prix at least. Still fighting out on track though is Jack Doohan. This time though he is he's still defending from Isaac Hadjar. Doohan, who already has a 10-second time penalty. Hadjar has been on the radio complaining about Doohan moving in the braking zone. Doohan is under investigation for that as well, but Doohan is still ahead of Hadjar, 14th and 15th.
So this is why a drive-through penalty sometimes in race is much better, because you know, Doohan is clearly holding up Hadjar. Hadjar wants to get on and get after Carlos Sainz in P13, and he's unable to do so at the moment because of a car that already has a penalty. So that's the problem with these in-race penalties of time in situations like this.
And the brake situation has been getting critical.
Yeah, I think the pedal's going flat.
So that'll be the pedal, Sam, going flat to the floor when you press down on it. Is that what Norris is meaning there?
Yeah, it is, and it's getting critical. Lando's got a lap and a half now to nurse this car home. He's dropped 5.1 seconds back now from Oscar Piastri, and George Russell is gaining time on Lando Norris for 2nd place. Are we going to see George Russell closing up to the back of Lando Norris, and is there going to be a change of position, Harry?
A nightmare end for Lando Norris. He'll try and hold on to it for as long as he can, but a gap that was 3 seconds between his teammate and Norris is now 6 seconds, doubled over the last lap, as we're on lap 55 of 56, the penultimate lap around this Shanghai International Circuit. Piastri leads Norris, Russell is third and is closing quite dramatically now, down to 6 seconds. Then it's Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton the top 6, Ocon, Antonelli, Albon, Behrman is 10th, ahead of Gasly, Stroll, Sainz, doing his 14th, still fighting with Isaac Hadjar in 15th, Liam Lawson is 16th, the two Saubers 17th and 18th, Tsunoda after a front wing failure changing that and peeling out 19th and last. No Fernando Alonso, he is retired from this race as we begin the final lap.
I worry for Lando Norris. I don't think he's going to be able to hold on to second. I think that the pace just isn't there. The brakes have gone on that McLaren car. George Russell now 4.4 seconds behind, and it's super early on the brakes.
He brakes before the 150-metre braking board.
He's got nothing left in terms of brakes. He's 8.1 seconds behind Piastri now. This is going to be remarkable if he can hold on to second place.
George Russell is closing at a rate of knots. It was about 9 seconds the gap. It's now down to 3.5 seconds as Norris is struggling to make it to the end in second place here. His teammate is escaping up the road and 8 seconds clear. Could Oscar Piastri have a clear view to the win? Lando Norris will not be getting the same mistake, but 3.5 seconds the gap between Norris and Russell. I think Norris might just hold on, but never say never. Verstappen is in fourth. You can see Norris coming onto the back straight now, and Russell is hunting him down. There's a car between them. It's one of the Sauber cars, but just one corner away for Oscar Piastri, who started on pole position. It is redemption day in Shanghai for Oscar Piastri, who crosses the line to win the Chinese Grand Prix. Piastri wins for McLaren. It's his teammate Lando Norris in trouble though, but he will survive and he will cross the line in second, and he makes it a 1-2 finish in Shanghai for McLaren. Russell closed in to a second of Norris at the line and finishes on the podium in third. Max Verstappen fourth, with the two Ferraris coming home in 5th and 6th place. Well, that got a bit exciting at the end, didn't it? But Bird held on, but Norris held on.
Yeah, great job by McLaren. That was more nerve-wracking than everybody on that pit wall would have wanted, but got the job done. Great job today by George Russell as well. And Lewis Hamilton coming on strong towards the end to finish only 2 seconds behind his teammate Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, he really did. Ocon, brilliant points for Haas. A double points finish for the Haas team with Behrman in 10th. And right at the end, we're still battling for 14th and 15th. I think Isaac Hadjar is going to be fuming once he gets out of the car with Jack Doohan, and he cannot find a way through. Past the pink and blue Alpine into the final corner. No, cannot get through there. Doohan will hold on for 14th on the road, but he'll get a 10-second penalty and immediately fall to the back. Hadjar will get that 14th place, but he'll be frustrated he couldn't do it on the road. Rounding out the points behind Ocon was Antonelli in 8th, Albon 9th, and Ollie Behrman.
Well done, Oscar. Great drive. Really good. Great job, mate. And it's a 1-2 for the team.
Yeah, mega job, guys. Mega job. Thank you very much. Car was very lovely. And, yeah, good work on reacting with the deck. So, great team effort. And that is one satisfying weekend. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Redemption for Australia, where a podium finish was well within his grasp, and maybe even to challenge his teammate for the win. Ultimately, he only came away with it with a couple of points. This time, though, he gets the full 25 for the Grand Prix victory. But there will be a bit of a worry down at McLaren, reliability-wise. Here's Norris.
Well done, mate. Well done. Sorry about that, for the brake pedal.
Yeah, well done, boys. Beautiful 1-2.
The brake pedal going long, so long that coming into, I think it was turn 6, Norris was easing off the brakes even before the 150-metre brake board.
But it's races like that that are critical to mount a championship charge, and it was very, very important he got it home and bring home those points. It was critical. He didn't push when he wanted to, so well done to McLaren and well done to Lando Norris for bringing that car home. Driver of the day for Kimi Antonelli, which is surprising.
interesting.
That's just madness.
That's
miles off the pace of Russell.
Finished where he started.
Finished where he started. The driver of the day is got to be either Leclerc or Piastri, surely. But anyway,
or Russell, I think, or George Russell,
maybe. Yeah,
I would give an admirable shout out for the likes of Esteban Ocon or Ollie Behrman, who had a hell of a stint on his tyres to secure him a top 10 finish, having started in 17th. But that's just for a point. For the full 25, the crowd roar for Oscar Piastri, and in between the red of Ferrari merch, you can see the glint of papaya celebrating and cheering on their McLaren 1-2 finish. Piastri out of the car, points his finger. I'm number one. Lando Norris comes over to congratulate his teammate. Norris, I think he's been fast all weekend, but Piastri was just able to, I suppose, make less mistakes, and crucially for Lando Norris in qualifying, well, he started third rather than on pole, and that immediately puts you on the back foot.
It does indeed, but he still would have had this problem with the brakes regardless of where he started in the race. So I think Oscar Piastri was always destined to win this race, and Lando maximised the amount of points he could get with this underlying problem.
Yeah, and after that, Lando Norris extends his lead in the championship. 44 points for Lando Norris. Max Verstappen is second, George Russell third. Oscar Piastri vaults himself up into fourth. George Russell happy with that one though, celebrates third position and scores Mercedes' 300th podium finish as an F1 constructor. Celebrations then for the silver arrows, and he goes over to congratulate Oscar Piastri. Helmet off for the Australian. Looks like he had to work hard for that one. So too for Lando Norris. A little bit flush-faced, straight in there with the water bottle. Outside of the top 10, Gasly just missed out. Stroll couldn't make his hard work going so long into this race on the hard tyre. Pay off with points, finished in 12th. They had a Sainz, Hadjar 14th. Lawson from the pit lane could only manage 15th, doing with a 10-second penalty at the end in 16th. The two Saubers, who really after lap one were both very much at the back of the field, 17th and 18th. And Tsunoda, a lot of questions will be asked over that front wing failure, not from him but also I think from the FIA too. 19th and last, with Fernando Alonso retiring early on in the race with brake failure. Back-to-back DNFs for the Spaniard. But for Oscar Piastri then, this is good motivation, Sam, isn't it, for him moving forward and bouncing back after a tough pill to swallow in Australia.
Great motivation. You know, he is a world-class driver. He's pushing Lando to within hundredths of a second in qualifying and racing extremely well. Zach speaks about him very, very highly, and rightfully so. He's just got his new contract. He is a man who should have a lot of confidence. It's early on in the championship, but he'll be right up there come the end of the year.
George Russell. Hear the crowd there. They're loving a wave from George Russell, who I think will be pleased with that result. I think Russell will be happy to come away with a podium there for Mercedes.
He'll be delighted because I didn't expect the Mercedes to be second best car. I thought they'd be third or fourth best car. I thought the Ferraris would be stronger than what they showed today. So yeah, George Russell, great job today, another podium.
Back-to-back podiums to kickstart the 2025 season for George Russell, maximising what he's got underneath him. His teammate Kimi Antonelli could only manage 8th at the end. A tough race compared to this time last weekend for the Italian rookie. Still though, the best of the rookies, picking up 4 points for 8th place. And Esteban Ocon as well, getting a really good result in 7th for Haas, picking up their first points of the season after being so far off the pace in Australia, thinking there was a problem with the car initially. Well, there was, but not one that they thought they would have a quick fix for. But to come here and get a double points finish was sensational for them.
All those long runs in pre-season testing may be paying off, because the race pace looks okay, doesn't it? It doesn't look like a backmarker team. It looks like a team that can score points on today's performance anyway.
Best of the rest, they beat a Mercedes as well. Well, there may be no Chinese driver on the grid this year in the form of Zhou Guanyu, who is a Ferrari reserve driver now. But we have had a few Chinese drivers almost get into a racy in the past. Ma Qinghua was an FP1 driver for the likes of Caterham and HRT, and well, the first was, although born in the Netherlands, of Chinese heritage, Ho Pin Tung was a part of the Renault team in the 2010s. We'll hear from Ho Pin Tung. He'll be doing the questions shortly to the top three. And a lot of love for Oscar Piastri out there in the grandstands. The I Love Piastri signage, the McLaren hats adorned. I think McLaren and Ferrari are the leading contenders in the grandstand support. Here is Ho Pin Tung talking to our race winner.
Oscar, very dominant win, a 1-2 for McLaren. Is this the start of your title campaign?
I hope so. No, it's been an incredible weekend from start to finish. The car's been pretty mega the whole time. I think today was a bit of a surprise with how different the tyres behaved. But no, super, yeah, just proud of the whole weekend. This is, what I feel like I deserved from last week. So, no, extremely happy. The team did a mega job. 1-2, obviously. So, yeah, very, very happy. And, it's just very happy.
Yeah, with the track rubbering in, was the tyre wear less than expected?
Yes, I think on the medium it was still a bit tricky, but much better than yesterday. And then the hard was a much better tyre than everyone expected, I think, or certainly than we expected. So, to go all the way to the end like that was a bit of a surprise, but a happy surprise. So, no, very, very proud of the race we managed to pull off. It wasn't an easy one going in, and just proud of the whole team and the weekend I've been able to pull off.
Yesterday you joked being 1/16th Chinese. Anything to say to your home crowd?
Thank you. It's not a joke, by the way. I do have Chinese heritage somewhere. But no, thanks for the support. The crowd's been exceptional this week. There's a few too many Lewis Hamilton fans, but that's okay. We'll convert some of you next year. So thanks for coming out. The support's been incredible this year, so I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Your race winner, Oscar Piastri. A home win for Piastri. Here's Norris.
Orlando, lots of support behind us. Can I say two crucial moments in the race for you? The start, overtaking George in T1, and then after pit stops again into T1 on George.
Yeah, a few fun moments. The start, I was kind of hoping for exactly that. So turn one went to plan, but then George got me on the pit stops, and I was a little bit nervous, but our pace was a lot better in the second stint. So tough race, just with the management, and I don't think many people expected a one stop today. So it was good, and Oscar drove well. He was quick the whole race. So I tried to get close, but in the end, just couldn't.
Yeah. Did you feel at any stage of the race you were able to challenge Oscar for the win?
Doesn't matter now, really, does it? It doesn't matter. He deserved the win, and he drove very well all weekend. So I'm happy with the second. It's good points. It's great points for us as a team with a 1-2. So a big thanks to everyone in Papaya, and just how we wanted the race to go. So we're very happy.
Yeah, and then at the end, probably the worst feeling a driver can have: a brake pedal going long. How difficult was it to nurse it home?
It's scary. It's like my worst nightmare. When I have a nightmare, it's when the brakes are failing, and I was losing 2, 3, 4 seconds the last couple laps. So was a bit scared, but we survived, and we made it to the end. So would have loved to have given it a little try and put Oscar under a little bit of pressure, but not today. So we're satisfied. Great result, and we'll go again next time. Thank you. Cheers.
Lando Norris in second, nursing that McLaren to the very end. And George Russell in third.
P3, congratulations. You look quite racy in the beginning. Do you felt at any moment there's more possible than P3 perhaps?
Yeah, it's great result finishing P3, especially in front of all these fans here. It's just been amazing support for everybody this year. So this weekend, so thank you so much for that. But yeah, really great race, really pleased with the P3. We knew McLaren were a smidge quicker than us. A few crucial points, but yeah, well done to those two.
Yeah, it looked like you kind of set the path for a lot of the others as well. You were one of the first to call that a one-stop perhaps would be possible.
Yeah, I felt it from quite early on that a one stop could be possible, and it turned out to be slightly easier than we probably all anticipated. But nevertheless, the car's been great this weekend. Probably one of my best weekends in Formula One in terms of the overall performance. So really pleased with that, and just really maximising every single time out on track. So pleased again to be on the podium.
Yeah, I guess a little bit of a lonely race perhaps for you. Did you expect more pressure from behind?
I mean, Charles was putting me under quite a lot of pressure of a few laps after the pit stop, and obviously it was a bit dicey with Lando for a few laps, but from there on in it was quite a straightforward race.
Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Well, you've heard from your top three then after the Chinese Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri taking the win ahead of his teammate Lando Norris in McLaren 1-2, and George Russell in the Mercedes getting his car onto the third rostrum of the podium. Sam, Max Verstappen ended in fourth in the end, having been languishing down in sixth for the majority of that race. Managed to get Hamilton with his late pit stop. Charles Leclerc, brilliant overtaking at the end on the Monegasque. And once again, damage limitation for Verstappen in that Red Bull and absolutely maximising what he's got underneath him.
Yeah, but he always seems to do that, doesn't he? Let's not forget, though, he was racing against a wounded Ferrari with Charles Leclerc, who was driving brilliantly around a problem. And Lewis Hamilton pitted twice, the only person inside the top 10 to do a double pit stop. So it's not gifted to him, but it was made slightly easier. If Ferrari had got everything right today, Max Verstappen should have finished sixth, I think. So he's outperformed the potential of that car, I think, a little bit today, and fourth place is a little bit flattering considering I don't think they had any race pace. Well, they didn't have any pace certainly at the beginning phase of the race. It came alive a little bit towards the end as the fuel load came down, but certainly on heavier fuel loads that Red Bull doesn't look as good as the McLaren, the Mercedes or the Ferrari.
You mentioned the Ferraris there as well. Charles Leclerc was a wounded Ferrari right from lap one, coming together with his teammate in light contact with Hamilton, but enough to rip off Charles Leclerc's front wing end plate. But that just didn't seem to really slow him down, not in the early phases of that Grand Prix.
No, I mean, we do this kind of thing in Formula E all the time, and it doesn't affect us. But in Formula One, with aerodynamics so critical to your performance, I expected them to pit him and change the front wing. At least that's what we thought would happen after the first stint when he got that buffer to Max Verstappen. I'm wondering what they're talking about here in the driver's room.
Here we go, and then you just shot me.
Because I went in, I was like, I got it so hard.
Oh,
They're just watching the opening lap.
Oh, goodness. He did really well then. In fact, if he had that from early on, that's the idea.
George referring to Charles Leclerc there and his front wing damage. And a satisfactory nod from Oscar Piastri.
Was he Barrichello's put me in the wall?
Don't tell Andrea that, because he'll never stop talking.
Lando Norris being reminded of when Barrichello almost got put into the wall in Hungary by Michael Schumacher, I think it was, way back when, in reference to the tight fight between Russell and Piastri early doors. It did get quite nice and tasty out there, but they're just in the cool down room reflecting on some of the highlights of the race. Lewis Hamilton, how will he be feeling about this weekend, Sam, after the heady heights of taking his first win for Ferrari in the sprint race to then having to be told to let through your teammate and finishing behind him?
I think mixed. Very mixed. I think that the sprint race showed a lot of potential, but then today showcases that they've still got a lot of work to do with regards to getting a full Grand Prix weekend working seamlessly.
Fifth and sixth for the two Ferraris, an improvement from their opening weekend at least. So more learnings to be taken as Lewis Hamilton gets to grips with his new team, new car, new steering wheel, new switches, new radio messages to deal with, as well as the team principal of McLaren, Andrea Stella, arrives at the bottom of the podium in the Parc Fermé area to celebrate with his team as the podium ceremony gets underway, and it's George Russell who heads out first to stand in the third placed position, followed by Lando Norris, who follows up his race win in Australia with a second place in China and leads the Drivers' Championship after 2 rounds of this 2025 Formula One season. But making up for lost points at his home round last weekend is Oscar Piastri. A flawless drive from the Australian to take the win in China. And here will be the winners' national anthem. The British national anthem for the winning constructor McLaren, following the Australian national anthem for Oscar Piastri, who takes the win, his 3rd Grand Prix win in his Formula One career. I do sometimes wonder, Sam, the path that Oscar might have taken if he had been an Alpine driver all those years ago.
Well, it wouldn't be as successful as the one that he's got now, wearing McLaren's colours. What a driver he is. There's a reason why Zach Brown and Andrea Stella brought him in. They believed in him, and he's rewarding them now with some stellar drives. Do you get what I did? Some stellar drives.
Yeah, no, I got it. Very good, very good.
I'd point that out.
Very good, very good. We'll clip that up and send it to your bosses, don't you worry. And the trophies are presented then to the McLaren members for their constructors, winning constructor, and George Russell as well will await his trophy for being in 3rd place, along with 2nd place Lando Norris, as they are presented to them on the Chinese podium, back for a 2nd year after a lengthy drop off the calendar due to the COVID pandemic. Lando Norris's dad, Adam, full of smiles as he looks up at his son. And this is the year then, I think, that Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are going to challenge for this world title. And it's going to be certainly between those two throughout the year. Whether other drivers come into play for that, we shall see.
It's just a case of who can take it to them. Will Max Verstappen be able to cling on and then hope for some upgrades? Can Ferrari find a little bit more pace and surge forwards? Or will someone like George Russell lead Mercedes back towards the front? Time will tell.
Time will tell as the champagne is sprayed on the podium and Oscar Piastri is absolutely drenched as Andrea Stella, the team principal, looks up at his 2 drivers who he will hope see fight it out for not only a Drivers' Championship win, but for what could be back-to-back constructors' title wins, having achieved that at the end of last year, their first since 1998, and McLaren are back.
I'd say it's a stellar performance.
You've done it already. You can't do it twice.
Look, I wanted to
do it twice. It's not allowed.
Look, I'm enjoying it. No, it's McLaren are definitely 100% back and back on top of Formula One right now. It's one thing being on top, it's another thing staying on top. They need to continue with the upgrades, work in the right way, believe that everybody else will be moving forwards. Right now, though, 1st and 2nd, and leading the Constructors and the Drivers' Championships is a great start to the season.
A week off now of racing after having a double header to start the year, then we'll arrive in Japan for round 3. What happens in this week off? Because it's not a week off. The drivers aren't putting their feet up, are they? What's happening back at the factory in the simulators?
There'll be a lot of work back on the simulators and back at the factory. Everybody will be working on trying to find little upgrades. You know, these cars are effectively new. For this season, they're still learning about these cars, and there's definitely upgrades that can go onto the cars when we get to Japan. So we might see nice little new tweaks on front wings, sides, floors, rear wings, whatever the cars believe is their weakest point right now. As for the drivers, get some rest. They might have a load of media and marketing activities to do, and of course fitness stuff as well.
A word on Alex Albon before we go. He finished 9th for Williams, back-to-back point scores for him after a fantastic 5th place in Australia. He fought hard out there, really made his strategy work.
Yeah, he always scraps, doesn't he, Alexander Albon, and he's I thought Carlos Sainz was going to go into that team and lead it from the offset, but Albon's holding his own. He's driving extremely well, and right now showing Carlos Sainz a few tenths a lap.
And one man with a lot of work to do ahead of Japan will be Red Bull's Liam Lawson in the other car alongside Max Verstappen from the pit lane. Didn't manage to get into the points.
No, I think we're going to be speaking quite a lot about that in the pod, because it's just same old at Red Bull right now. Nobody has come into that second seat at Red Bull and survived it, and Liam Lawson looks like he's going to be another casualty. He could still turn it around, Harry, because he's good enough. He's definitely good enough and talented enough to do that. But right now, on the evidence that we've got, it's not going well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sam Bird, McLaren's Formula E driver, for being alongside me, as well to the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. 2 rounds down to kickstart the 2025 Formula One season, and it's McLaren who are on top. Lando Norris winning the opening round, followed by Oscar Piastri, with work to do for those behind. Stay tuned to the Checkered Flag podcast feed, where we'll be analysing all of that and what's to come, so look out for that on BBC Sounds. But in the meantime, we shall hand you over to Jeanette and Gordon for Sunday Breakfast.
Oh, incredible stuff as always, team. And thank you to our F1 team out there in China. And McLaren 1-2, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, lots to get through on the show. Gordon and I are with you till 10.